You wouldn't put a square peg in a round hole, so why would you deploy a traditional firewall in a modern decentralized network? Firewalls have new requirements for businesses leveraging SaaS-based applications and public cloud platforms like AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. We're in the cloud generation now, so your firewalls have to be engineered to fit right in. Reclaim your cloud network. Try a Barracuda Cloud Generation Network or application firewall free at barracuda.com/firewalls.
It was BYOG, bring your own guts.
This is the best
Do you hear me?
of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
And welcome to a new week. We have made it to the middle of the month. Is this tax day? I forgot to file. Anyway, I think it's somewhere this week. Anyway, welcome to Monday. Glad you're here. We have a lot to do. Let's get to the headlines. Jimbo Fisher. You remember him? Used to be at FSU, and now he's tearing it up at A&M. He unveiled a new offensive system Aggie fans seem to like. We'll talk later. Down in the swamp, there's a new feeling. Dan Mullen is back in town, and they got that juice back at Florida, according to some of the recruits. We agree. Mizzou, remember them? Okay, no jokes. Mizzou showed glimpses of firepower in the spring game under new OC Derek Dooley. And from AL.com, an article by Matt Zenith and John Talty. A lot of people are yapping about this one today. What really happened between Hugh Freeze, Alabama, and the SEC? You've heard us talk about this story. Hugh Freeze, according to what we had been told he had the Alabama job, offensive coordinator, and then he didn't have it. According to the article by Matt and John Talty, said five SEC schools in all were talking or wanted to talk more to Hugh Freeze, but the conference advised them against it. There is a bylaw in the SEC that says a school must contact the SEC about any individuals who have a history of major NCAA infractions for a conversation about that individual. But ultimately, even though the article insinuated it was the commissioner's decision, the bylaw states that the institution has the sole authority on hiring personnel. The SEC has no veto. Well, anyway, the article insinuates that it was the SEC commissioner that informed Alabama or suggested to Alabama not to hire Hugh Freeze. We know one thing, Hugh Freeze still doesn't have a job. And Nick Saban apparently acquiesced to what was suggested to him by the SEC. We'll talk more about that later on. 855-242-7285 is our number. Who's on today? Ben Baby. Just win, baby. He covers the Aggies. Jordan Rodgers. Cecil Hurt will get his take on what happened to Hugh Freeze, and Andy Staples will get his take on pretty much everything. But first, your phone calls at 855-242-7285. Again, I want to say one more thing about Friday's show. I don't remember a program that we've had more reaction to for what a guest said and did. You may remember J.K. Scott was with us at the very beginning of the program, the outstanding punter who went to the White House last week and prayed with Donald Trump, the president, and then he did the same thing with us here on Friday. Appreciate we've had just thousands of tweets and texts and emails reacting to that. We appreciate all the support. It's on our Finebaum Facebook page now if you somehow miss that conversation. 855-242-7285. That is the number. Let's talk about some of these spring games and some of the news of the weekend. We begin with Matt in San Antonio. What do you say, Matt?
I loved that spring game, Paul. I really did. I was impressed with Jimbo Fisher in the offense. I loved it, Paul.
Looked like what I saw on television, Matt, a record crowd was there.
Oh, yeah, it was a record crowd. I mean, it was a record crowd, and I was honestly impressed with the way the offense looked, the way the defense looked. and I was impressed with the quarterbacks. Jimbo Fisher is doing an amazing job with these quarterbacks and developing them. Jimbo Fisher's doing. I mean, before he got there, the quarterback, Starkel was doing pretty good. Mon was doing not so bad, but ever since he took them underneath his wing, the quarterbacks seem to be getting much better than they were last year, Paul. And I think the defense overall is becoming much more better under our new defensive coordinator than Chavis, the second defensive coordinator.
I tend to agree with you on that.
And I just wanted to ask you 3 questions, Paul.
Go.
If you had to determine the way the team looked in the spring football game, what would your assessment of it? My first question would be.
Well, let me offer this caveat. You should neither read too much or too little into a spring game. It's an indicator. It's not the conclusion, but I liked what I saw. How about that, Matt?
That's fine. And I guess my second question would be to you, Paul. I like what that Alabama quarterback said, was it Graham McElway? I'm not very good at remembering names that well. I like what he said, that he said basically they're not too far off from making it into the college football playoff. Yeah, they might not have all the talent Alabama has, but they're not too far off of being.
Let me say this to you, Matt. Jimbo Fisher will get the Aggies to the college football playoff.
Okay, that was my second question.
That's a prediction from right here, right now.
Okay, my third final question to you is, with the quarterbacks, who do you think basically from either Kellen Mond, Nick Starkel, Connor Boombick, who has a leg up on that race?
Matt, I'm just not sure that I could make that prediction boldly right now, but we will soon. Not soon, but when the fall comes. Thanks for the call. Do appreciate it. Matt, back-to-back Matts. Matt is in Gainesville. How are you, Matt?
Hey, Paul. How are you?
We are doing great.
I was watching the Braves on Friday, but you just saying that J.K. Scott prayed with Donald Trump and played on your show, that is awesome. That is awesome. That young man did that with the president and did that on your show. That speaks volumes for him, and no bias aside. I mean, that is really cool. I will go back and watch the replay.
Please do. I think it would be worth. I think it would be worth your time.
Yeah, and another thing I was going to tell you, I go to the Gwinnett Stripers games. You probably remember them, the Gwinnett Braves, and I had a lot of Alabama fans coming up to me and telling me to not let you pick on me. And I was like, well, you're an Alabama fan. And they're like, yeah, but we like what you bring to the show. So a couple really nice people out there, 2 Alabama fans and a Tennessee fan. They didn't know who I was, but I said, do you watch Finebaum? And they said, yeah. I said, you know who Matt from Gainesville is? And they're like, no way. And I was like, yep, I'm the idiot from Georgia. But like I said, that's great on that player's behalf, and I mean that speaks volumes of him and his family and his upbringing. You have a good day, Paul, and go Dogs.
Good to hear from you, Matt. Thank you very much. A lot of great reaction coming in. Let's check in with Justin in Nebraska. Hello, Justin. Welcome to our show. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Paul. How's it going?
Excellent.
So what are your thoughts this weekend with the Florida Gators spring game? I was watching it, and I kind of took away seeing Felipe Franks doing the same thing he did last year, just holding the ball, getting into trouble a lot. And I know you don't really want to take a lot out of the spring game, but what are your thoughts about from the Florida spring games? I thought Trask did a great job. Yeah,
listen, I saw bits and pieces of all these games, and I hate to be a final judge from a distance, but people that were there said the same thing about Trask. He looked great.
I mean, he looked amazing. I know Florida got a lot of hype. I mean, Dan brought back, I think, the first time since they won the last championship in 2008, they had the most people at that spring game. And, you know, I'm really happy with what he did, and I think having the players, Percy Harvin was there, and seeing him back was great. And I think this whole huge bringing the players back is something that they're getting started, and I think it's going to be key going into the future.
Great to hear from you. Thank you, Justin. Always good. Gene in Louisiana, you're on the air. Go right ahead.
Hey, Paul, thanks for taking my call. I'm a first-time caller talking to you. I did call in a while back and talk to somebody else substituting for you. However, I would like to get your comments, opinions, etc. on LSU football as they stack up in their division. If you would, please, sir, comment on that.
I think LSU will do better than the projections. Right now, the projections are not good. I'm sure you've heard that. But to me, I think it all depends on what you consider a good season for LSU. But I think Orgeron will exceed expectations this year.
Well, that's great news, and I kind of feel that way too, Paul. And I hope that they come around after the spring game, and no injuries of major concern, and be able to put a real good team together on both sides of the ball, you know.
I hear you. Hey, thank you very, very much. Really great to hear from you. We are up against a break. Pretty fast couple of minutes to start things off. 855-242-7285. That is our phone number. We're coming right back.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Glad you're here. We're happy to have you. Let's grab some more phone calls here at 855-242-7285. Ed is in Mississippi. You're on the air. Go right ahead.
Pretty cool down here today, Paul. I really do enjoy these spring games. Now, Paul, I'll tell you one thing that's kind of been under my skin a little bit here. Now, Dan Mullins is a great coach. There's no doubt about that. He's proven himself time and time again. We know that. But the situation, you know, I'm always one of these guys. I like to give credit where credit is due. And, you know, a lot of people say, well, Dan Mullins made Mississippi State. Well, that's true. But this is kind of like the tail that wagged the dog, because to me, Mississippi State made Dan Mullins, even though he is great as he is, you know, they catapulted him to that position in Florida or anywhere, everybody that wanted him. You know, I mean, Dan Mullins owes Mississippi State. A lot of Mississippi State still loves him. And you know, I just believe that, you know, it's kind of like, you know, if you're going to say it on one hand, let's turn it over and look at the other hand, too, because if he would have gone, let's say he'd have gone to Tennessee, Arkansas, some of these other programs, he wouldn't be with. They didn't have the talent. Another thing is this. I am so tired of everybody. Oh, LSU's got so much talent. Florida's got so much talent. Well, where is it? I've been looking for 5 years, and all I've seen was one running back, Leonard Fournette, and that's all I've seen.
Well, they had Darius Geis, too.
Well, true enough, but both
Arden
of these
Key, they've had some good players down there.
Both of these schools are supposed to be the hotbed for recruiting with all the talent in the world, and I mean, can they not develop it? Surely, because Franks, to me, is not a quarterback for Florida. I don't know what they're doing down there. What's happening, Paul?
Well, listen, I don't know what's happening. Dan Mullen just got there, and I think that would be a good question at the end of the season. But right now, I think he'll find a good quarterback, and it may not be Frank, and if it's Trask or the young player that he brought in. But I don't need to tell you how good Dan Mullen is in developing quarterbacks.
Absolutely. So I wish him all, and the people of Mississippi State, listen, we're just thrilled to death for Dan Mullins because he did make us, and we helped him. And, you know, it's kind of like the tail that wagged the dog. One helped the other. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you. Tail that wagged the dog, or is that? Who cares? Hambone is up next. What do you say, Hambone?
Okay, Paul, I'm going to give you my prediction. Before Texas A&M makes the playoffs, Alabama will win 5 more national championships. Roll Tide, roll.
Well, nothing about you got to give Alabama fans credit. When they hear somebody else is nipping at their heels, they just say, you know what? You may win 1, we're going to win 5. I'll take your bet on that one, by the way. That won't be true. Zach is up next in Georgia. How are you, Zach?
Hey, Paul. How are you doing today?
We are doing great. Thank you.
That's fantastic to hear. My question is about Tennessee football. We got a quarterback situation, I believe, brewing out there in Knoxville. Are we going to go with JG? You know, he's got a lot of heart, good attitude, I believe. You know, or are we going to go with the Stanford graduating, you know, Keller Chris? You know, maybe a wild card to McBride. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, I don't know. I mean, everyone who wants to name the quarterback now, had Alabama fans had their way, they would have already told Jalen Hurts to leave school and give the job to Tua. Tua's been banged up. We don't know what his condition is going to be. So, I mean, I just think you have to be patient. I'm anxious to see this game on Saturday, Zach, as I know you are, but I don't know the answer to your question, and I don't profess to know. Chase is up next in College Station. Welcome to the program, and good afternoon. Chase, you there?
Hello?
Yeah, go right ahead.
I'm here.
Great.
Hey, Paul. I was just wondering who you think Jimbo is going to go with, Starkel or Kellen Mond. I went to the spring game, and Kellen Mond kind of started out shaky, and he kind of turned on late in the game. I just wanted to know your thoughts on that.
I mean, I don't want to say be indecisive here. That's not normally my way, but I don't think I've seen enough to be able to tell. Have you?
No, absolutely right. Starkel had his faults and Mond had his faults. That's why I'm a little worried about our quarterback situation.
I'm just not sure, Chase, and that is about as good an answer as I can give you. Preston is up next. Preston, we appreciate your call. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate this. My first time to ever call. I've got a couple of questions. It's real simple. I love the Get Off Our Lawn series. Is that going to come back? And
I hope it comes back. I thought it was one of the funnier segments we've had on this show.
I loved it.
We can use a little more humor on this show, don't you think?
I think so.
Too serious sometimes.
Another thing I'd like to ask about is I'm from Arkansas, obviously, and Bear Bryant is an Arkansas native.
Sure is. Fordyce.
Fordyce. There's still a lot of Bryants live over at Fordyce.
Do they really?
Is there ever a chance that 30 for 30 would do a thing on the Bear?
You know, they did one on, they actually did a movie on the Junction Boys. I don't know. It's a good question. He's a subject that's difficult because there have been so many documentaries done on him, but I don't think anything has really been done on the early Bear. They could call it the Junction Boys was not early Bear. The Junction Boys was his second or third job, but I'd like to see the early days of the Bear.
He's just a fascinating character to me. And one other thing.
Well, you could have him wrestling the Bear.
Oh yeah.
Bryant. Let's see. I'm trying to remember. He served in World War II. What else did he do before he got his first head coaching?
He was at Kentucky.
I think Maryland was his first job, then Kentucky, and then A&M.
He actually, I think, signed up or was going to go and coach at Arkansas. The draft.
Yeah. Was that the story where he was about to be the Arkansas head coach, and then the World War II came? That's it. No, I couldn't remember.
One other thing, you had a caller a long time ago, a year or so ago. Stingray. I'm not a Mississippi State fan, but I always enjoyed him. He was radical. Is he still around?
I haven't heard Stingray in a long time.
Oh, I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Preston. Really, good. I'll pass that along to the person that runs the 30 for 30 unit. Good to hear from you. We appreciate it. We're going to take a short break. More phone calls. Ben Baby on the resurgent Aggies. All right, some clowns are already picking them to go to the playoffs.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
You're not worth a flip.
Everyone in the neighborhood knew about Bobby. Bobby, the basketball boy, they called him. Bobby wanted to go pro someday, so he was always out in the driveway shooting hoops. But one day, his mom came out and told him,
"Hey, your wife wants you to take out the trash?"
His mom was visiting, and Bobby was a grown man. He had kind of missed his window. Plus, no one had ever seen him actually make a basket. But on the other hand, Bobby had heard how Geico could save him money on car insurance, so he switched and saved. So it was all good.
Welcome back to the program. We were talking about A&M. I want to bring Ben Baby on here because Ben covers A&M for the Dallas newspaper. Ben, thanks for the time. Before we get to the spring game, we just saw a clip of Johnny Football. What's going on out there? Because there was a time not all that long ago that this university officially wanted nothing to do with Johnny Manziel. Good afternoon.
Yeah, first, thanks for having me, Paul. Always good being with you here. It's kind of crazy to see the 180 that's happened with Johnny. I think as Johnny's kind of rehabbed himself, not only from a literal rehab standpoint, but when you talk about his social image and kind of the way that he's viewed around the country, I think he's a little bit more. I think now it's not as much of a risk to be associated with a guy like Johnny. And Jimbo made it a point to have these alumni come back, and a lot of people, like, when kids get their offers from A&M, they still will post pictures of Johnny Manziel. He's still a very prominent figure. So I think it's something A&M definitely wants to cash in on. And now I think it's to a point where you're not going to have the backlash that you would have when he was with the Browns or just out of the league because of all the issues that he had to deal with.
Was that a top-down mandate from the administration? Because, you could feel it everywhere and anywhere that, hey, we don't want anything to do with this guy.
That's a good question. I don't actually know the answer to that, but I would not be shocked if that was the case. I think that, like, A&M had a kid, one of their top draft prospects for the upcoming year, defensive tackle Zakoven Henderson, was arrested on a suspicion of a felony gun charge.
Yeah, we heard from his dad one day.
Right. Oh, you did. That's interesting. Yeah. No. So he was not allowed at A&M's pro day. However, he was at the A&M spring game. And nothing has really changed with the case except for the fact that it's more, the longer it kind of drags on, the longer it seems like the Brazos County DA might not prosecute it because they still haven't done anything with it yet. So, I think it just goes on a case-by-case basis, but I think that's how it goes for everybody. I think as long as it's not worth the public risk or whatever backlash that may ensue, I think people are willing to take waivers on things that might be a little risky.
Okay, so great crowd, great feeling coming out of there, a lot of optimism. You're an objective reporter. You're not a fan. What do you think, and what did you see?
Well, first off, I appreciate the objectivity shout-out. That's always nice to hear. I thought that we're going to talk about the quarterbacks. I think that's the number one deal. Nick Starkel started out really well, and then, and Kellen Mond admittedly said that he was sloppy to start out, but then as the scrimmage progressed, it kind of flipped, and Mond looked a little better at the end than Starkel did, and Mond drove his team back down to win. I think it was kind of vintage Kellen and what he showed as a freshman, that he'll make a couple throws that are really, really impressive. The big thing for him, and something that we're not going to be able to see in a spring game, is can he do it consistently whenever a defense is really keying in and forcing A&M to throw the ball? Because we don't know what A&M's offensive line is going to look like. It didn't look all that impressive in the spring game, and we don't know if it's going to be any better in 2018. And so if A&M can't run the ball well and their teams are still going to make A&M beat them with the pass, then, it'll definitely change the way the defenses approach the Aggies. So, right now, like, if I had to pick a starter, I would pick Nick Starkel. I think he'd be the guy, but it's honestly a lot closer than I thought it would be going into the spring game.
You've been around this program, and I realize Jimbo's here, the contract, all the hullabaloo, but beyond that, what else did you sense and feel from the spring, especially what you saw on Saturday?
It seems like there's more of you can definitely feel that Jimbo does things a certain way, and it's almost completely different than the way Kevin Sumlin did it. The guys throughout the spring, you hear the comment that if something goes wrong at practice, you were going to hear about it immediately from a coach. And it was almost to insinuate that wasn't like that with the old staff, that there's a lot more attention to detail. The practice is a little tougher. And, Jimbo's going to be out there in your face if you're messing things up. And I think that's one of the things that, maybe A&M needed. It's definitely a shift in culture. Whether that's good or bad and actually translate to success, we're not going to know until the fall. But I think that's something the players definitely had to get used to because, it's definitely not the way that someone ran things. And so I think the spring was good for them to kind of get adjusted for that and get a feel for what it's going to be like in the fall because, I think you're going to see more of the same where you're going to see Jimbo and his coaching staff really on the players and demand nothing but the best rep in and rep out at practice. And you don't know if it was always the case under the Sumlin era.
Ben, we know what the chancellor said, and we know what the contract reads, but in terms of this year, what are realistic expectations?
I think right now, looking at what they have, I would think a 9-win season would be a really good year for A&M because you've got Alabama and Clemson within a 2-week span in September. You would have to imagine both those are losses. And then when you look at, the SEC West and kind of where things sit, you still think that until they can prove they can beat LSU, I think you still have to give that one to LSU. And then, I think Mississippi State and Auburn are still very good programs, especially Mississippi State, even though they lost Dan Mullen over the offseason. So, I think 9. If they lost to Clemson, Alabama, and then only lost to one other team the rest of the way, I think that'd be a heck of a year for Jimbo in his first year. I think I've got him at 8 wins. I think that would be pretty solid. I think right now, you want to just get the building blocks and get everything squared away so that you can make a run.
Hold on one second. And if we could leave this, for those watching on TV, I want to leave this on the screen for a second. You said 8 wins, realistic, right?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, I'm gonna go down the schedule because this is really interesting. Clemson at Alabama. Those are the 2 treacherous games of the first half of the season. It would, there's also Arkansas and Kentucky, but just for the sake of argument, we'll say you're right about that. That leaves you with 2 more losses the rest of the way to get to 8 wins. Here's the schedule: at South Carolina, at Mississippi State, at Auburn, and then Ole Miss at home and LSU at home. So I'm going to say there are 4 games there that the Aggies could either be an underdog or close to an even pick. Of those 4, at South Carolina, at Mississippi State, and at Auburn and LSU, what's going to happen in those 4 games? You got to win 2 of them, don't you?
Yeah. Oh, man, that's tough. It's honestly the same predicament that we were in last season, trying to pick, because I could have conceivably had A&M at 4-8 or 8-4 at the end of the year, and they ended up at 7-5.
Okay, but let's do it this way: South Carolina, win or loss?
I'll take a win. I'll take a win. A&M has a
so you will win. The Aggies will go on the road October 13th and beat South Carolina. Okay, at Mississippi State on the 27th.
Oh, I think they win that one because they're coming off a bye.
I'll repeat again what I just got through saying. The Aggies will go on the road I feel like a game show host, on October 27th at Mississippi State. So therefore, you're going to say that at Auburn and LSU could be losses, or at Auburn, then maybe the LSU game could be the 9th win, right?
Yeah, I think so. Man,
wow.
I was not expecting to be put on the spot, but you are. No, it sounds about right. I think when you go back and look at it, I think you're 100% correct, and those games could go either.
Well, and I'm not trying to marry you to this. I just think it's, it's easy to say. I'm not picking on you, man. It's easy to say 8 wins, but I'm just trying to figure out how to get to 8 or 9 wins.
No, it's tough. And honestly, we were like I said, the same predicament last year, and you're just playing the odds that a couple of those coin flip games go A&M's way, and I mean, last year A&M was a couple possessions away from winning 5 games instead of 7.
Can you tell me though, Ben, as a veteran of the SEC, why you would think A&M is going to be able to go on the road at South Carolina or Mississippi State and win?
I think South Carolina, A&M's been able to beat them since they've entered the conference. I think that would. Right now, with the way I'm going, I think that the traditions hold. I think A&M still beats South Carolina. I think they still lose to LSU. Now, that could be flipped. They might lose to South Carolina.
Okay, we know all that. We know all that. It's April.
Right. So, but, I think...
Okay, and what about Mississippi State, which brings back Nick Fitzgerald, which brings back the guts of last year's team? You think the same is true there, right?
I think so. And A&M's defensive front's gotten a lot. I think A&M's defensive front's going to be a lot better than people realize. And I think if they're able to stop the run better than they have in recent years, and I think Mike Elko is going to be, I think Mike Elko could have the defense looking better than it did under John Chavis.
Okay.
As crazy as that might sound. So yeah, I think those are reasons to pick A&M if you're going to do so.
Is your phone number listed?
I hope not.
Okay, I just wanted, because we're getting a lot of calls from Starkville and Columbia, South Carolina, wanting to talk to you. Hey, Ben, it's always fun. Thanks for being here. As always, we will talk to you soon. And the Starkville Quarterback Club would like you to speak tonight, because there are a couple of pies that they would like to hit you with. Thanks for the call, Ben.
No problem. If I get any angry mentions or phone calls, I'll be sure to send them your way.
Please do. Good stuff. And again, I'm not picking on Ben. But I just think people are selling South Carolina and Mississippi State short. Now, I realize I'm the one that just gave the vote of confidence for Jimbo Fisher, but I think you have to try to separate tradition, what's happened in the past, versus what's going on today. We will take a short break. More of your phone calls at 855-242-0033, 242-7285.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Welcome back. Let's get your phone calls at 855-242-7285. Don is up next in Iowa. How are you, Don? Always love a call, the enthusiasm. Don, one more time. How are you? Hello? I just heard myself come back. Actually, you're speaking into a seashell. Thank you, Don. Always a pleasure. Come back soon. You hear? How about Greg in Alabama? How are you, Greg?
I'm doing well, Paul. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
In reference to the possibility of Texas A&M making the playoffs in 10 years, I think that's doable.
Yeah,
but
very doable.
The question it remains to be seen is, do they have a dependable running back, and can their defense step up in ways that it hasn't in the last, since they've been in the SEC? They've had some really good.
But Greg, as you know, 10 years is a lifetime.
Sure.
And it's very likely, I hope Alabama fans will turn the radio down. This is post-Saban.
Yes, it will be post-Saban. And there's no guarantee as an Alabama fan that Alabama will win another championship. There are no guarantees.
There are no guarantees in life.
Exactly.
Well, there are a few. There are a few. I know. The guys in the booth know what I'm talking about.
Yes. Now, at what point in the 10 years of this contract do fans start to chafe at A&M if he doesn't make it to the playoffs?
Yeah, and by the way, Greg, a 10-year contract, you know what that really means? It's a 5-year contract.
Exactly.
Because after 5 years, if they're 7-5, they're the same rich fat cats from the oil rigs and the oil wells who gave Jimbo the money will say, Jimbo, we really appreciate you coming, but what's it going to take to get you out of here?
Exactly. So I think, in theory, it's possible, maybe even likely.
We're more than happy to pay you the remainder and give you some to leave today. And you can take the 10-gallon hat with you, buddy. Now get out of here.
I thought the other interesting thing that you guys showed at the intro was the story about Hugh Freeze. And
oh, my goodness. Is that a crazy story or what?
It is. And not only that, Commissioner Sankey would go that far to talk to Nick Saban, but that there were quite a few SC teams that wanted,
I think we know LSU is another one. Missouri is reportedly one of the schools. And listen, I mean, you could, who knows exactly what happened in that conversation, but I'm guessing that for anyone who wants to say the SEC shouldn't have done it or Nick Saban shouldn't have done it, this, you know what this is really a bad look for? It's a bad look for Hugh Freeze.
Yes.
It means that reasonable people who care about the integrity of a 14-school institution took a look at Hugh Freeze and said, you know what? We don't want this cat around. That's how I read it. Maybe I read it wrong.
No, I agree with you.
And why wouldn't you want Hugh Freeze around? Forget what Hugh Freeze has been saying or selling. Okay, the guys involved in sanctions, which you can quibble about to the end of time. That's one look. And even though this should not have anything to do with it, the other look is personal misconduct. How are you going to overcome that? Now, by the way, I realize we're talking about something that's relevant to the issue and something that's not, but the combination, it's bad.
You're exactly right. I think my hope is, this is not in regards to Hugh, but that Commissioner Sankey maintains this tack consistently, especially in the basketball arena.
Well, Greg, it's a tough one. There's always been a relationship between the SEC office and schools. I remember a case years ago, a specific school wanted to bring in a player of some ill repute, and the commissioner let it be known that he really didn't think it was a good idea. Legally, they could. They did, and it turned out to have a bad ending. So, I mean, there is a give and take. I don't believe that the SEC would tell Nick Saban, you absolutely, we forbid you from doing this. It's ultimately the school's decision. But maybe they said, listen, are you aware of this? Are you aware of that? Is this really what you want to do? And I don't know how that really works. I wish somebody would come out and discuss it. It would be fascinating. But in the end, before everyone wants to throw rocks at various people, the person that has to look himself in the mirror is Hugh Freeze.
You're right. And I don't know. I mean, we weren't privy to the conversations that Nick had with Sankey or with Hugh Freeze.
No.
And just going based off what the story says, he really wanted him, and I guess he was willing.
Well, I can tell you, Greg, and I'm sure you listen to the show enough. I said it at the time that Hugh Freeze had the job, and the next day he didn't have the job. Hugh Freeze went over to Tuscaloosa. He felt like he had been. He felt like the job was his, and then it was yanked out from under him. And it's still somewhat of a mystery how that went down. Well, maybe Cecil Hurt can enlighten us in about an hour. But this reporting today on AL.com is the closest I've seen to getting to the bottom of it.
Well, it's an interesting story, and hopefully we will know more. And I appreciate you taking my call, and have
Always.
a great day.
Thank you very, very much. Good to hear from you. Let's go to Will in Memphis on a Monday afternoon. How are you, Will?
I'm doing just wonderful, Paul. I'm calling in here from beautiful Memphis, Tennessee. I'm a freshman at one of your former high schools, Christian Brothers.
Oh,
and,
wow.
I'm a
How about that?
Mississippi State fan. And, I do statistical analysis every year since I was about 7 years old. But I think we've got a real good shot at doing, 10-2 or even better.
I totally agree.
I think, we've got give me's against Stephen F. Austin, Louisiana, Lafayette. Florida's going to be a tough one at home, but that's Dan Mullen coming back, and I really think we'll have kind of a sort of vengeance thing against him. So I think we'll get him as a dub. But Auburn's going to be a tough one at Mississippi State. And
State has a schedule. State has a manageable schedule, I think. You look at it, first half of the season, toughest game is at home against Auburn. You got Florida and Auburn at home. I mean, those are winnable. At Kentucky, that won't be easy, but Kansas State should win. And then at LSU, that's a tricky game. At Alabama, that's not a tricky game. That's an obvious game. And then what does Ole Miss? Then what does Ole Miss have at the end? I mean, that is not a cinch, but the only thing I don't like about that schedule about Mississippi State is a new coach. Sometimes a new coach can miss on something that a veteran will not. Anyway, we're out of time. Actually, 3 more hours.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Put a little cherry on the top.
Time for an oil change? Head to Jiffy Lube. We've got you covered. We've also got you covered when it comes to oil changes, thanks to Pennzoil Synthetic Motor Oil, getting you back on the road in a jiffy. Jiffy Lube. Leave worry behind.
It was BYOG, bring your own guts.
This is the best
Do you hear me?
of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
We welcome all of you back. The first hour was crazy for a Monday, middle of April. It was insane. Welcome back to the show. We have 3 more to go. Let's roll the headlines here and share with you what we'll be talking about next. The NCAA has a new rule, alteration to the football kickoff rule approved. Football kickoff rule altered to show the receiving team to fair catch a kick inside the 25-yard line and have it result in a touchback. Saban, smart. What about it?
They'll tell you, the rules committee, that's why they do what they do. They have like statistics on it. They keep it. I mean, it's a long-term. Concussions are a little bit higher. There's a little more injury there, so they're trying to make the game safer. We don't go down and practice kickoff full speed live ever. I mean, it's dangerous because you got guys running 40 yards into each other. So we don't ever do that. But as far as the rule, if they say that it's safer, then I'm obviously in support of safety. I mean, I think anything you can do to make players safer, it's a wise decision.
I would have liked to seen a different solution. I understand the reason, and I respect the reason, which is player safety. But I guess that takes some of the strategy out of the game, to me, with the result that we had. And you would have got the same result if we'd have just moved it up 5 yards, because almost everybody in college football would have kicked nothing but touchbacks. And you still would have had all the strategies that you could have used in other circumstances.
Yeah, it's been a long time since Nick Saban has actually liked a new rule, but I tend to think he may be onto something here. What is this rule accomplishing? That is the question. More of your phone calls at 855-242-7285. A lot of guests to come. We've already had a few. Let's check out Blair. Blair, how's Mom?
Good.
Blair's in Maine, for those of you who are driving around.
Yep. And it's raining outside.
It's raining in Maine. Let the rain in Spain. No, that's Maine. That's Spain.
I'd rather have rain, Paul. Rain and meatloaf coming from the sky.
Sounds like, remember, you ever heard that song, Weekend in New England?
No, I haven't. Have you ever seen meatballs coming from the sky with rain?
I've seen Lucy in the sky with diamonds, though.
I'm just making crap
Don't remember
up.
much about it, but I would, one night,
Okay.
that's all I could see.
The reason I called was...
Barry Manilow was the author of Weekend in New
okay
England.
Paul, are you okay with the slide that happened in the New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox game?
Blair, I don't know how to break this to you, but I start paying attention to Major League Baseball in October.
Oh, okay.
What month is it, Blair?
It's only... See, God, I'm bad with the months.
Unlike people in New England, we have gotten above 30 degrees. Not by much, I might add. It's going to be about 30 tonight here where the spring just will not start, but we're still a little closer to spring than you are in Bangor.
No, I'm not in Bangor. I'm in Demerscata, Maine.
It took me a long time to learn how to pronounce that.
Demerscata,
I didn't realize it was Bangor.
I'm in Demerscata, Maine, Paul.
So where are you? Are you on the northern part or southern part?
Mom, are we on the southern or northern? Yeah. Well,
Hey,
we
Ma!
are right here.
Can we get some meatloaf?
What? Mid-coast.
We want it now!
Hey, Blair. Hey, Blair.
Well, the meatloaf is not around right now. We don't have any on the table.
So, Blair, what's Mom up to today? Canasta game or what?
My mom's reading a book.
What
Or
book?
knitting. That's what she does. Knit or...
Call the Wild by Jack London? It's kind of your part of the world, isn't it?
Paul.
Yeah, Jack.
Paul.
Yeah, Blair.
Paul Finebaum.
Yeah.
On television, she goes.
What was your favorite book growing up, Blair?
I don't like to read. What I like to do is sit at home, watch sports, watch the extra innings, and I like to also play the MLB.
Blair, I didn't ask you what you like to do as an adult. I asked you what your favorite book growing up was.
I don't remember reading, really.
You've never read a book in your life?
What book did I read when I was young, Mom? This is on.
Dick,
This is on the
Spot,
TV.
remember
I'm
that book?
live.
What was the name of that book?
No one is interested in this. Even my mom just said that, Paul.
What'd your mom say?
No one's interested in it, and she's looking right at you on the TV. No one's interested in it, and I'm looking straight at you. No one's
Hi,
interested
Mom.
in it.
Send money.
Mom, he wants money. How much money?
How much you got?
How much you have? He's right there. Talk to him at the TV. He's right
I'll take your U.S. savings bonds, okay?
Hey, we'll send you a credit card, okay? Love you, Paul.
Okay, Blair, thanks. I'll let you spend the rest of the night with Mom. I would advise him reading, speaking of Mom, a little bit of Freud. Starts with an O, Oedipus. Okay, we're in Maine, okay?
Okay.
Let's go down, what, is it 3 states to Connecticut?
Yes.
Ed is in Connecticut.
Yes, I am. And before we start talking about my health,
I want to talk football.
Yeah, Ed. We feel good. We know about your health. Let's talk football. We got that the last
you're
time.
the one that always brings up the health issue.
Well, Ed,
I'm not letting you tonight.
I have a lot of elderly friends. I learned ask how they're doing, just to be on the record.
Okay. Unfortunately, I haven't heard a whole lot, except that I'm going to be fantastic this year again. I don't know how fast you replace all these guys that left.
It won't be easy, Ed.
Okay, I do accept the fact that we had a pretty good recruiting year last year and this year, and that's how Alabama does it.
Well, yeah.
And, there's still some guys. There's one guy named Swift. I understand that is, I saw him run that touchdown against Auburn.
Yeah.
He's pretty swift.
So you're going to watch the game this week?
Turn down the TV. How long? I ain't been asked to turn down my TV in so long.
It's going to be on ESPN. Okay, thanks, Ed. Okay, Maine to Connecticut. Now we're going to go a little farther south to Drew in New Jersey, right outside of the Big Apple. How are you, Drew, as we work our way down? We're out of New England, finally.
Good.
What's up, Drew?
How are you, Paul?
Okay, we went from Mom, who's 80, to Ed, who's 78, to you're, what, 15?
Wait, huh? What you say?
You're how old are you? 11 or 15? I can't remember.
10.
Hey, kid. I made a mistake. Okay.
So, my questions were some about the Alabama football schedule, and I kind of understand why they're so good. I looked at their schedule; it looks super easy. They're going to play Citadel. That's easy. You know, again, you're playing Arkansas State, Louisville, and a couple of other teams, so that are easy to play against. So it doesn't look like they're
Kids say the darndest things.
Huh?
You know what, Drew? I'm struggling. I'm struggling to find anything you've said that isn't true.
Yeah, Ole Miss, Missouri, Tennessee.
Okay, let's look at the schedule for a second. Louisville, they're yesterday's news. Arkansas State, who cares? Ole Miss, they're in a rebuilding mode. A&M rebuilding. Louisiana, don't even care. At Arkansas, rebuilding. Missouri, rebuilding. Tennessee, decimated. LSU, trending in the wrong direction. You're right. This is an easy schedule.
Mm-hmm. I forget, what was their schedule last season?
Well, last year the schedule was different. They opened up against Florida State. Now, before everyone says, well, they weren't any good, Florida State was the preseason number 3 team in the country.
Oh. Well.
That's back when you were 9.
Oh, yeah. Well, isn't it crazy what they can do? Because, you just consider that I think the score...
Hey, Drew, what are you eating right now?
Yeah.
What are you eating?
Just some fruit, blueberries. I just came home from school now, so...
Blueberries with what? What are you eating the blueberries with?
Kitchen. I'm not eating it with anyone.
No, I mean, what are you just eating plain blueberries? Like no, like cream or yogurt or...
Yeah, I'm just eating them plain, but...
I mean, Drew, I got to ask you something. I mean, when you were a kid, did you just come home and eat blueberries? Or I came home and ate potato chips, candy bars,
peanut butter crackers. When I usually come home, I get a big, I guess.
That's why I ended up like I did, but.
Yeah, but today I was getting the blueberries.
I got to tell you that's pretty. I mean, what are you eating later? Like a kale salad for dinner?
No, usually like pasta or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Carb up.
Mm-hmm. So, anyways, what I was going to say.
Drew, do you eat any fast food?
No, but I like but we tend to eat a lot from the pizza chain. So we like I like Domino's and Papa John's a lot.
So you're a Papa John's family?
Yeah, we love them.
That's good.
I'm the only one who likes them, but Little Caesars was awful. I had it for the first time 2 weeks ago, and that was the worst pizza I had in my life.
We signed Little Caesars yesterday to a 5-year contract on the show.
Oh, But anyways, I told you what I was going to say is, like, the Alabama-Georgia football game. That was crazy. Like, I think Georgia was winning, like, 3-20 or something, and Alabama came back in overtime.
Yeah.
That's like the Patriots-Falcons game.
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah. Like, the Patriots and Falcons, that was a surprise.
Who's your NFL, Drew? Who's your NFL team?
The Steelers or the Giants. I go for the Steelers or the Giants.
Okay.
So,
well, the Giants should get better. Hey, listen, Drew, we're up against a break. Thanks for the call. We are knocking down Maine, Connecticut, and Jersey. We'll work our way back to our native land here in a few minutes. We're up against a break. Your phone calls are next.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Welcome back to the program. Glad you're here. And let's continue with our phone calls here. And how about Diane in Florida? Remember that song, Jack and Diane? How are you, Diane?
You there?
Do you ever know anybody named Jack?
My husband's name is Jim.
Oh. You're married to Jim from Tuscaloosa?
Unfortunately, my husband is Tuscaloosa.
Is everybody having as much trouble hearing Diane as I am? Okay. Yeah. But bar Jack's phone for a second. We'll figure out Diane in a minute. Charlie is up next in Chaplin. I guess nobody's ever confused you with Charlie Chaplin.
Hello.
Hey, Charlie.
Hey, how you doing, Mr. Finebaum?
Doing great.
It's snowing and the sun's shining here.
Oh, my goodness.
Listen, I wanted you to mention the Big Cats going to have a great year this year. They got a defense that's coming up. It's going to be competitive this year. And the offense, I want one name, A.J. Rhodes, Heisman Trophy candidate.
You think so?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And we got depth at every position, even the quarterback. And don't forget the name Walker Wood. He's a walk-on quarterback.
I will not forget that name.
And that's all I had to say. I just want a long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thank you so very, very much. Good to hear from you. And okay, we think we have Diane back in Florida. Hello, Diane.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
We are great. Thank you.
You're looking so well, as always.
Thank you.
Mike, I just have a few things to say. I don't really care about Texas A&M. I'm just glad that Johnny Manziel is doing very well. My question is, what do they eat at the White House?
What do they eat there?
Yeah.
Anything they want.
I don't really care about Texas A&M.
Diane, you still there?
I'm still here, honey.
Okay,
I got my radio up.
Yeah. You can turn it down if you want. We'll still be here.
I will.
What do they eat there?
I'm listening.
Okay.
What do they eat?
So your question was about what do they eat at the White House?
Yes. Did they, like Forrest Gump, did a lot of Dr. Peppers? I mean,
well, no, I mean, the White House, and I don't want to act like I know too much here, but the White House has a White House mess where staff can eat, and you can go, I've seen this with my own, you can go pick up food. And this is for West Wing people, West Wing officials, and then there's obviously the White House kitchen, I had a tour of this not long ago, is in the basement. That's where the food is cooked, and they have an official White House chef. I'm curious why you want to know this, but I figured I'd relay the answer.
I'm always hungry.
Okay.
After Drew called and he talked about blueberries, I ate an Oreo.
Oh, I thought you just wanted to know where the president got his food. By the way, the president's favorite food is it McDonald's, and I think he likes KFC too, doesn't he? He's big on McDonald's. By the way, if I was running for president, I'd be big on McDonald's too. McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, anything that can relate me to the common man.
favorite food is it McDonald's?
Yeah, thanks, Diane. We got to figure this. Talk to me, not listen to the TV or radio. But great to have you on, and what an important question that was. Martin is up next. Martin, welcome to the show.
Did you know that the president has to buy his own food unless it's a State Department dinner?
So if like Prez and Melania just want to stay in for the night, and he orders, he said, "Cook me up some pot roast." He's got to pay for that.
He has to buy his own groceries, pay for them out of his own pocket.
I never knew that, by the way.
Or order from Domino's.
You think the president is a pizza? I've seen him eat pizza. Yeah, I do think I remember he ate pizza during the campaign.
New York pizza.
I wonder if he ordered now. If the president, John just suggests, if he orders out from the Trump Hotel, does he have to pay for it since he owns it?
Well,
it's just right down the street.
I wanted to make a suggestion for the fellow in Maine.
Okay.
Easy read. An easy read would be Flowers for Algernon.
Oh, wow, you're right.
And I wanted to ask you a question concerning the fellow that called, I think from Florida, that made the comment that Ohio State was going to wipe their butt with Alabama.
Yeah.
What does Ohio State's schedule look like? And is there any chance that anybody could be the Charmin on that list and end up wiping their butts with Ohio State?
We're going to wipe your butts this year and smoke them.
Yeah, Martin. Their non-conference schedule is a little bit better than it has been. They play Oregon State, which is a walkover, and TCU, which is not. They have played in recent past Oklahoma, just to name a couple. Nebraska and Michigan are at home. They're at Michigan State, so they basically have a 1.5 game schedule, if you ask me. Not tough for. But Urban Meyer is looking for a quarterback. I bet he has one. We'll take a break. 855-242-7285. Jordan Rodgers will join us next.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
You're not worth a flail.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like a whole new person.
Disclaimer, you will not become a whole new person. This is impossible. You might be able to join a gym or diet program, buy a new wardrobe, get hair implants, but your DNA and physical form will remain the same. Geico waives any and all liability if you attempt to become a new person, except a cyborg. If you choose to become a half-human, half-cybernetic organism with lasers for eyes, the Geico legal team would be cool with that because, quote, laser eyes are pretty sweet. Pew, 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 end quote.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Welcome back to the show. Jordan Rodgers was at the game, did it for television. And Jordan, thank you for your time. We've been talking about the spring game. We saw bits and pieces of it. You saw the whole thing. Thanks for being here and tell us what you saw.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Paul. Interesting case here. I was excited to get down to Gainesville to check out this Dan Mullen Florida football team. Just off the top, they're not devoid of talent. They have talent all over the football field, especially in the skill positions. Some of the guys are still trying to get eligible at receiver, and Van Jefferson and Trey Grimes, the running back depth chart is loaded. I think the biggest question mark is really the offensive line. Can they come together and find a front five that work together as a cohesive group? And then the reason Dan Mullen was brought to Gainesville was to get a quarterback. Get one and or develop one that they have in their back pocket to compete for SEC championships. And right now, the talent, that's still a question mark. I think Felipe Franks has a lot to build off of from an arm strength standpoint, from an athleticism standpoint. I thought Kyle Trask had maybe the best spring day or spring scrimmage at the spring game there, completing balls downfield. But the biggest question mark in that backfield, to me, I think Dan Mullen put this as good as anybody. This team has talent. They don't have confidence right now. This is a team that before the start of last year had some of their star players suspended throughout the year. They had, towards the end of the year, they had their coach fired. This is a proud program. They expected to win at Florida. They did not do that. And I think they're a little shell-shocked still from last year and the disappointment that it was. And the leadership group and the confidence has not risen to the point where they're able to step past that at this point. So I think that's what Dan Mullen and this coaching staff needs to do, is build confidence in these young players. Find some leaders, find a quarterback that can take this team and run with it, because the talent is there, but right now they're just not playing like a team.
So we saw 3 quarterbacks in the game. Of course, we all know about the highly regarded freshman coming in. I mean, that is your position. With what you've seen, heard, been able to cobble it together, how would you rate the quarterback race coming up here in the fall?
Yeah, Paul, I think it's wide open. I think one of the best things that Mullen did early on in spring practice is he opened up a couple of the spring practices to the fans. And now when you have a 5-star quarterback like Emory Jones come in, and you've had a quarterback position that's been struggling as of recent, or really since Tebow at Florida, you're kind of banging the table for the 5-star to get some playing time. Well, he's just not there yet. He's got a ton of talent. But if you watch practice, he is miles behind Felipe Franks and Kyle Trask as far as running this offense, consistently completing balls downfield. Now, does he flash skill? Absolutely. Does he have a higher ceiling than those guys? He might, but he's not ready to play just yet. I think their best option is still going to be either Felipe Franks or Kyle Trask. I think the biggest strides will be made from now until August 4th when camp opens. But I will say, kind of really pressing Dan Mullen about this position, I think we're going to see Felipe Franks be the starter, and I'm just guessing here. I didn't get told anything. I think we're going to see Felipe Franks be the starter. I think we're going to see him run the football a lot more than maybe he expected, maybe we've seen in the past. As we asked Mullen about developing Felipe as a passer, he said, well, sometimes you got to build confidence through his strengths. Right now, his strength is running the football. He can flash his arm strength. He can make some big throws downfield. But until that confidence starts to catch up to the development of his passing game, he's the best option running the football from the quarterback position. He's big. He's more athletic than I think we give him credit for. I think we're going to see an offense that utilizes Felipe Franks differently than we saw last year, and more so as a runner.
Jordan, what did the other side of the ball, the defense, of course, look like to you?
Oh, it's interesting. I got a chance to play against Todd Grantham, so I know that defense well. I know his track record at Mississippi State, taking them from a worse than 100th defense to top 15 at times in the country. He's a really good coach, and they're going to have a facade, at least, of a complex defense. What I mean by that is they base out of the front three, and that fourth guy, who was like a Montez Sweat last year, who we saw rack up a ton of sacks, is going to be that fourth rusher they're going to move around. So the most interesting piece of this Florida defense right now, I think, is Jabari Zuniga. His athleticism and ability to be that Montez Sweat type athlete, to be a linebacker, but more a pass rusher off the edge. They'll move, they'll walk him around. This is going to be a defense we're going to see bring a lot of pressure. Now, of course, if you watch the game, you don't really see that in spring because the defensive coordinators are somewhat handcuffed, and that's by design. You want these offenses to do well. You don't want to be bringing blitzes from the corner and knocking out young quarterbacks, so that's understandable. This defense is going to be much improved. They're very talented in the back end, and I think a guy like Zuniga is a guy to keep your eye on as someone that could really flash and become a household name sooner than later.
Finally, Jordan, it becomes almost cliche this time of the year to start trying to figure out where will this team settle in terms of a record, but you have a better clue than we do. We get asked about it every day. I mean, what does this team look like? Are they? We know they're probably a bowl team, but how high is the ceiling?
Yeah, right now, and just this is my opinion, but just getting the temperature of this coaching staff, I don't think they're overly confident in what they have right now. Now, that's not just Florida. That's any new coaching staff that's really rebuilding these guys from the ground up and focusing on fundamentals more so than offensive scheme and teaching them how to actually be a team. If the offensive line comes together, they can be talented on offense. But still, you got Georgia getting better. I think you have Kentucky that returns almost everybody on defense that's going to be much improved. You have a Missouri team in the East that can put points up on anybody. I think this team, if they get to 8 wins, they're going to be super happy with the trajectory that this Florida team is on. This is not going to be a turnaround like I think we might see at Texas A&M, where I think Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher's new staff is ready to win now. Florida, I think, is about a year away, but that doesn't mean we can't see them get 7 or 8 wins and be a team that we start to see on the rise towards the end of the year.
Jordan Rodgers, just off of his call of the spring game down in Gainesville. Jordan, thanks so much. We will talk to you soon.
Sounds good, Paul. Good to chat.
You bet. Great stuff from Jordan. More guests to come. We'll go to Tuscaloosa a little bit later on, see if we can get some clarity on how close Hugh Freeze almost came to working for Nick Saban. Andy Staples later on. Your phone calls are next.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
We welcome all of you back. We're glad you're here. It's been a very busy afternoon. Let's continue. Ron in Key West. Good place to be on a spring day. How are you, Ron?
Doing great down here in the sunny Florida Keys.
I bet. Glad to have you on board.
Well, I'm a first-time caller, and I'm a Gator alum, so I enjoyed your interview with Jordan Rodgers, and I was curious about your take on the Gator quarterbacks this year.
Yeah, listen, I tend to agree with Jordan, and by the way, he knows a lot more about it than I do, so I'm going to defer to him for the expertise, but I think it is going to be a slow transition, but I think once the ball starts rolling or the train starts running down the track, whatever cliche you prefer, I think Dan Mullen will really lead this program back. I don't think it will be very long. I've seen him before, and I also, like you do, know how powerful Florida can be when everyone is on the same page.
And speaking of the first year, what do you think about the odds of the Gators winning more games than Jimbo Fisher at A&M?
I might give a slight edge to Jimbo, but I think it will be. I think there will be a one-game differential. I do think Florida's schedule might be a little more challenging than. Well, I take the correction on that. Both play really good. Florida plays Florida. Let me look at this Florida schedule again. Florida plays Florida State and Georgia. I actually think A&M has two tougher games than that because of the Alabama Clemson. But LSU on the schedule again at Tennessee, at Mississippi State. I don't think Florida got any favors playing at Mississippi State. I think that would be a really challenging game. But Kentucky is another scary game, I would say, that no one has really given much thought to.
And South Carolina could be tough, too.
Yeah. I look at Mississippi State and South Carolina kind of in the same boat. One has a new coach, one has a third-year coach, but they both have really good quarterbacks, and they both are dangerous.
One other thing, I thought the running backs looked very good at Florida. How did the running back crew this year at Florida compares to the rest of the SEC?
Well, it's getting better. Certainly, if you kind of start thinking about it, it wouldn't be the best, but it is. I'm just trying to think of what I saw. I think it's going to be really good. That would be my response to you without being able to digest 14 schools in my head at the same time. Jeff is up next in Chicago. Hello, Jeff. Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon to you. Hey, just wondering, I heard you saying that, just recently here today that Ohio State had about a 1.5 game schedule. So it got me curious. I started pulling up some schedule rankings here for this upcoming season. It looks like Ohio State has the 15th hardest schedule in the country. Well, anywhere between 12th and 17th, according to these two. But, they play at Penn State. They play TCU and Texas. I'm just wondering if they have a 1.5 game schedule, then what does Alabama have?
Hey! Come on, Jeff. Alabama has the Citadel. You think that's easy?
You know what they say? It's kind of like Starkville. You just do not want to go to Citadel. At least they got Citadel at home. I guess.
Well, really, you make a good point, and I think I walked into that one, but. Alabama's schedule. Alabama has the easiest schedule that I have seen under Nick Saban because they don't play a legitimate. I'm going to repeat this again, Louisville fans. They don't play a legitimate opening game. I mean, Louisville's a joke. Let's be honest. I mean, without Lamar Jackson, that's a 3-touchdown game. And then where are their hard games? LSU could be a challenge, and Auburn. Mississippi State at home, I like them there. Alabama plays about a 1.5 game season as well. How about that?
Well, LSU has LSU. I don't get it.
By the way, I'm counting LSU as the half game.
Yeah, well, they have the least experienced roster in the entire SEC coming back this year. But
Alabama does not have
up with these things called. Do you think this year's Alabama schedule is easier than last year's Alabama schedule?
Now, Jeff, you're being a revisionist history, though. You have to look at the schedule as you're going into the season. After the fact, no, Alabama had a very easy schedule. But going into the season, like we're going into 18, Alabama had a challenging schedule at Auburn to end the season, and then at Mississippi State, which we knew before the season was going to be a challenge, and then playing Florida State. That was a toss-up game in April. Okay, I know it's easy to say now, but that was a team a few of our colleagues picked to win the national championship.
Yeah, but you're kind of also the same guy that I know you pointed out Ohio State's game against Oregon State, but if Alabama was playing Oregon State, you would be on these very airwaves going, oh, well, when they made the schedule, Oregon State didn't
Chicago. Hold on a second, Chicago breath. I just got through calling Louisville a joke. I don't know. You must have been watching a Cubs game or something when I said that.
No, because of our wintry conditions, the Cubs can't even play. None of these teams know how to make stadiums with retractable roofs anymore. In fact, I don't think the Cubs are going to be able to play for another 2 weeks when I was just looking at the long-term forecast right now. But, I mean, I don't know. It just seems like you forget about these little things called facts. I mean, sometimes I feel like...
Jeff, I haven't forgotten about anything. I mean, if your
bias is so...
Jeff, listen, I'm not even going to bother defending that because I just got through calling Alabama's schedule weak, so I don't know what you're listening to. I don't know what you're a serial caller, Jeff. You call up with an agenda. No, you call up with an agenda, and then you don't listen to anything else that you hear. Jeff, come on. This is not our first rodeo, okay?
No, Paul. You're the one who said Ohio State has a 1.5 game schedule. They play at Michigan State. They play at Penn State. They play TCU.
Jeff, come on. Penn State's got nothing this year, okay?
They have nothing this year?
Well, my stand, listen, you're a big. Jeff, you went to Indiana, so you're afraid of Penn State. I'm a college football fan, and I know what they lost, and I know that Ohio State will win that game. That's not a game that scares me, okay?
Yeah, I guess Penn State must be like Florida or Kentucky or some of these games that you guys.
Now we're getting to the underbelly of the call. This is I'm going to call the Finebaum show because I live in Chi-Town and I went to IU, so I'm going to make fun of all those schools that beat up on my schools, right, Jeff? And by the way, Jeff, why don't you call the Big Ten Network show right now? Why don't you call the Big Ten Network show right now and have an honest and objective conversation about that? Oh, I forgot they don't have a show. Ron, assuming you can. Ron is up next in Oakland. How are you, Ron?
Doing well. I'm originally from Chicago. Why don't you ask Jeff about the Bears for a while?
Well, because I try to stay on the subject. I don't change. I don't make up my facts as I go along like Jeff does.
I heard I don't know when your interview was, but I heard a broadcast of an interview you did for a Birmingham radio station or something this morning. You spoke about Taggart.
I was on WJOX this morning in Birmingham.
Yeah, I saw the stream, and it was a pretty good. I couldn't even recognize your voice for a while. It's like your voice is so different from being on TV, radio versus other interviews. I was like, is this Paul? But it was a great interview, and I think you made some valid points concerning that Taggart does have an easier road for success, and while Nick Saban is in the SEC, and while Kirby Smart has the momentum he has in Georgia, it will be a more difficult process for Dan Mullen to get there. But I'm not sure if Taggart will ever get there at all. So,
Ron, the question was between Taggart and Dan Mullen, who will get to a title first. And I think Taggart has an easier road to be the first one to get to a title. I would take Dan Mullen long term over Willie Taggart, but that was again. When you're answering your question, then it gets disseminated and aggregated by the media. You're always going to be at the mercy of whoever is doing the aggregation.
Yeah, and it was just a great interview, and it just had me like, I got to call Paul today. And but I just heard, clicked on and caught the end of Rodgers, another Cali guy, their interview. And one thing I wanted to say is the projection of this season. I think the most important thing.
Ron, I hate to interrupt. We're out of time.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Put a little cherry on the top. Bring your own guts.
This is the best.
Do you hear me?
Of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Second half of the show live and underway. We welcome you back. It's been a busy one, and we'll continue. A lot of guests to come. We've already had quite a bit of conversation. Football seems to be in the air. Big surprise about that. You heard the number, 855-242-7285. Let's grab some calls, and Larry is up next.
What's going on, Jack? Woo! Hey, check it out. What's up? I hear Jeff from Chicago trying to overtalk my man. You know, he don't listen. The boy don't listen. It's Bama fever, brother. They get it in their head. They can't get it out. It's if we win, it don't matter. So we play the same. Everybody plays the schedule a year, and then they play for national championship. We won. Woo-hoo! And that's the way it is. And if you don't like it, find soccer or something. But Mark Kubiak is pushing your buttons, man. He's going after you, Paul.
Well, what about it, Mark?
Whose buttons am I pushing?
You're pushing his buttons, Jack.
Sounds like your buttons are getting pushed, Larry.
Yeah.
No. You are. You're trying to go after Paul, like making, changing things. Like he said this, didn't say. He knows what he says, and what he says is always right. And you're always wrong. You're just like that guy that reminds me of Tom. Hey, Tom, from up north. You know, the Yankee Doodle guy.
Your favorite, Tom from Cleveland. Where's Tom been?
What?
Yeah,
Tom
Paul.
sounds just like that other Yankee. He sounds like y'all.
Larry, what do you have against Yankees?
All y'all sound like me.
What do you got against Yankees?
What?
So what do you got against Yankees?
I just way you talk, man. How would you in a crowded room at a party and people talking like y'all talk? I ain't guy's name you understand. If somebody called my name, I wouldn't know who said it because y'all sound the same.
So Larry, do I understand? So you don't like Yankees, right?
I despise them, and I'll tell you something else. That moon is going to turn green April 20th, and that's a sign. You know what that moon turns green for? It means you ain't. The moon turned green at 420 years.
I thought the
April
moon turned
20th.
green, then the cheese is not ripe.
No, it's the Yankees. The Notre Dame, it's a sign that Notre Dame won't win another national championship for another 420.
Okay, Yankee Doodle, thanks for the call. Tucker is up next. You're on the air. Go right ahead, Tucker.
How you doing, Paul? Thanks for taking our phone call.
Thank you.
Can you hear us okay?
You sound wonderful. Thank you very much.
Oh, you do too, sir, and it's a pleasure to listen to you every day. You're the best. We're very excited over here, calling you from Mountain Brook, Alabama. Just got done building a high school called Vicinity Trinity. Beautiful.
Really?
Yes, sir. High school, actively recruiting a coach by the name of Kev Mayer. He's out of Tuscaloosa school out there. He's related to Nick Saban, and he's a slim fellow. We love him. Now, his assistant coach might not be coming along. His name is Brian London, beast of a man. He's a big one. Might not want to go along because of his family that invented, actually, the London broil years ago. Finally, they won the rights to the name London broil. So a lot of money for him, his family, God bless them. For example, check this out. Z to A, S low or high, tip of the iceberg to the rhomberg to the amber. That's just one play that they devised audible. My question to you is, and again, thanks for your time. My question to you, sir, is do you think out of the 790 high schools in the area vicinity, are we better in a triple A or a 4A environment? And we'll hang up and listen to your response.
Thanks, Tucker.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. God bless you.
Thank you very much. Congratulations on the high school. I'm not sure, and I also always hate to answer a question when I'm really not that learned in the subject. I mean, I know the classification system. I don't know how dramatic the difference would be between 3 and 4. Do you? But I'm glad they built the high school. And I don't know about their high school, but we built this city on rock and roll. Clarence is up next. How are you, Clarence?
Hi, Paul. How you doing?
We are doing great.
That's good. I really mean that.
Thank you.
What I want to talk to you about is the Alabama A-Day game. And if the quarterback situation down in Tuscaloosa, if it even is a quarterback situation. Some people want T for Tua. Some people want T for Jalen. Personally, I want T for Tua. I think Tua's got a bigger, stronger arm. 99.9% of quarterbacks out there.
Well, I don't think there really is going to be a quarterback debate right now because Tua has been hurt twice now at the beginning of spring and now toward the end. So Jalen Hurts will emerge as the starting quarterback. I think Nick Saban. What's that?
What is wrong with T for Tua?
Well, T for Tua hurt his finger on the first day of practice, and he re-injured it over the weekend. So T for Tua will not be playing in the spring game, I don't think. He has had limited opportunity, so there's no way he could have won the job. So there you have it. I think we'll just to be continued. I think it's a break for Saban that Tua didn't emerge as the overwhelming winner, and that would have caused issues for Jalen Hurts in terms of remaining. Thanks for the call. Do appreciate it. How about Joe in Red Bay? How are you, Joe?
Good afternoon, Paul. I'm doing good, and how y'all doing today?
We are great.
Well, that's good. I want to say hi to John and Mark, and just to let y'all know, I do not have nothing wrong against Yankees. And I do have something wrong against idiocracy, which is what Jeff in Chicago was, displaying today by not listening to. He didn't listen to a word you said, Paul. I mean, he really didn't.
Is that like a meritocracy?
Yeah, I guess it is. But I want to talk a little bit about the Alabama A-Day game also. I'm actually going to be at that game, and I'm going to actually be on the sideline for a little bit or out on the field. And so I'm hoping I get to see Joey Galloway and we can work out our differences and Kirk Herbstreit, because I thought about what you said about Kirk the other day, and Kirk actually is a good guy, and I do have a lot of respect for him. And I want to say a good shout-out to Rick Carley, my buddy. I hope he's going to be at Tuscaloosa this Saturday because I want to see him.
Rick Carley? Wow, of course Rick will be there. Rick's Mr. Tuscaloosa.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll holler at him later this week, and I do want to get up with him this Saturday. But, I know there's been a lot of talk about the quarterback situation at Alabama and all of this, but you know who we lost this year, offense, defense to the NFL or whatever. And is there any certain thing you're looking for more on the defensive side or the offensive side, or or anybody, any side of the ball you're looking for somebody to step up to the plate? Are you really going to be looking at the offensive side or the defensive side this weekend? Because I'm going to be looking more at the defensive side of the ball this.
Yeah, listen, I know the defense. I know the offense is going to be quality offense. I'm not overly concerned about either side of the ball, Joe. Nick Saban is notorious for not showing much in spring. He didn't get to where he is by letting the kitchen sink out. Hey, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Let's continue with more phone calls here. And Joseph is in Florida. How are you, Joseph?
Oh, hey, how you doing? Good.
We are doing great. Thank you.
So I was just wondering, I know this is the SEC network, but I was just wondering if you think you might be putting on the turnover chain again this year.
Yeah, I think Miami will be good. I tell you what, that first game is going to be pretty intriguing against LSU.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited about that. I'm glad they're opening up with stronger.
I'll be watching that one. That might be my favorite game of the opening weekend.
Yeah, well, it's weird. I was just curious why it was on Sunday. That was kind of weird to me. Is that something new? Or
no? Well, here's what they do. It's the only college football weekend of the year where there is no competition, so they play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. That's the reason. It's a standalone game on Sunday night. Nobody else is watching. Nobody else is playing, so they own the night. That's why they're doing it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with them will be the quarterback situation, really. Whether one of the newcomers they get in there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a real question mark. Hey, thanks for the call, Joseph. I really do appreciate it. We're up against a break. More of your calls, more guests to come. It is Monday on the show.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Welcome back to the program. We've had a lot of interesting calls from all over the country. Jeff is up next, not the Jeff from Chicago, the Jeff from Columbus, Ohio.
What's going on, Paul?
How are you, Jeff?
Hey, I'm doing real good. This is a great show tonight. You need to tell Larry and Shelby it's Patriot Day in Boston, but it's Yankee Day on the Paul Finebaum Show today, brother. I mean, the Yankees are coming in strong, and it's amazing to me, Paul, and I know you've got to deal with this all the time, but with all the success the SEC and especially Alabama has had the last, 5-10 years, why is everybody so sensitive down there when we bring in some facts and comments? You know, y'all get so, sensitive down there. I just don't get it. Why is that? Can you explain that to me?
It's a Southern thing, Jeff.
I mean, Jeff from Chicago, I thought had some facts, Paul. I thought he kind of had you boxed into a corner a little bit when you said Ohio State has basically a game-and-a-half schedule this year. I mean, you know that's not right. You know, and Jeff was coming in.
Okay, Jeff. Allow me to correct myself, okay?
Okay, correct.
I want to do a public mea culpa. I did say Ohio State had a game-and-a-half season, and I have found out the errors of my ways. So please accept my apology. I'll repeat it this time for the cameras. Ohio State does not have a game-and-a-half season. Ohio State has a game and three-quarters season.
So what are you doing, giving John's Penn State three-quarters? Or I mean, you're not even giving us a full game for beating Penn State over there?
You Buckeyes, you had that win over Alabama in 2014. You were able to use that to your benefit. And since then, it's all gone wrong. Alabama has won 2 titles, probably should have had 3. You guys,
and I give you full credit for that, Paul.
You guys up there are you're no longer content beating up the piñata, better known as Jim Harbaugh. So here's what you want to do, Jeff. You got your big boy pants on, and you want to go over to the big playground and start a fight with the SEC. Well, let me tell you, it won't work. I mean,
Paul,
you're so defensive. Chicago, now Columbus, Ohio. We're just having fun with you guys up there. Relax. I realize it's April. What is it? 16? 16. It's April 16th in Columbus or Chicago. It's still 12 degrees, and you're wearing your parkers and your caps and your gloves. Whatever you're wearing, who cares?
Yeah, Paul,
don't worry about the facts here, Mark.
I mean,
and you're whining and you're crying, and we're just having fun down here because we sit out in the sun, we go to the beach, we have a good time. And you guys, I mean, what did Ohio State do last year? during the season. Can you help me, educate me?
We discussed that over and over, Paul.
Yeah.
And I told you, if
you took the gas pipe is what happened, Jeff. You have a chance against Wisconsin, a bunch of slow guys, and you let them get the better of you in the second half, so you sat out the party while Alabama and Georgia slow dance on January 8th. I don't remember what the question was.
You asked me the question. I was going to answer like I honestly have. But when Jeff had you pinned into the corner, you go to that lame Big Ten network, call them. That's weak, man.
No, it's not. It's not, Jeff. Jeff, it's not weak because
especially when you were wrong about our schedule. You were wrong,
Jeff. Who cares?
I mean, it's ridiculous. Okay. Why are you guys so sensitive about when people come in?
See, Jeff, the difference between us and you is that we have a forum down here where you can discuss things. We let you in. We invite you. We try to make you feel comfortable, and all you do is come into our party screaming about why you didn't get a good invitation. I mean, you're visiting. I mean, you're not really part of this family. You're visiting. You stayed 2 nights. You want to stay 4 nights, and we're tossing you out. Okay, it's Sunday night. You're going home. Thank you. Thanks. Rich is from Atlanta.
Woo! Jack, can somebody tell the Jabroni Jeff brothers that the Howard Stern channel is further down the dial?
Oh, my goodness. I made a simple statement. Hey, Rich, I may have been wrong, but I can tell between the two of us, I'll never apologize.
Wouldn't it be great if the Jabroni Jeff brothers had a show on the Big Ten Network?
The Big Ten work is truly missing out for an opportunity.
Yeah.
The crying. Remember that movie, The Crying Game?
Oh, yeah. Hey, Jack, speaking of the Big Ten Network, can you explain? I don't totally understand what happened. Now, Comcast dropped them in the non-Big Ten footprint. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what were the reasons? And could that ever happen to SEC Network?
Well, I'll give you a broad view, Rich. I think when you have good programming, national cable companies like to have you on regardless of where you are. So I couldn't answer the question about the SEC Network. That would be out of my pay grade, as they like to say.
Right. Okay.
I know one thing. If the Jabroni brothers are on the show any more than they've been today, we probably will get canceled nationwide.
Yeah, I would call them. I would definitely call them. They're hilarious. Hey, the Alabama schedule question that Jabroni Jeff was talking about. who was number one in the playoff seeding? Who was the number one team in the country?
Well, that would have been Clemson last year.
What happened to Clemson?
They got waxed by Alabama.
Who was number 2 in the playoff seeding?
That would be the Sooners from Okie Land.
No, you sure it wasn't UGA?
I'm not positive, but I think it was Oklahoma.
Okay. All right. Well, Oklahoma, which is fine, which was a great team last year.
We'll double check on that, but I think it was Oklahoma.
Okay. Well, what happened to UGA in the championship game?
Well, they won. Well, they played. They beat Oklahoma.
Okay, and then what happened? What was next?
Well, then they lost to the number 4 team.
Okay, Alabama. Oh, Alabama beat the number 1 and the number 3 team in the country. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Well, there you go for your roll tide, Jack. Thanks, buddy.
Listen, I don't. I made a statement just for fact. I mean, not for fact. I was responding to a caller. I think Ohio State's schedule is okay. It's not great. We're talking about non-conference. We're not talking about in the conference because we really don't know how that's going to pan out. I've said repeatedly, I don't think Alabama has a great schedule. I don't know how many more times I have to say that. But listen, we've heard from Chicago. We've heard from Columbus. Where else? Detroit. Are you watching today? Who else is it? Where other Midwestern city would be snowed under right now? Muncie, Indiana. I mean, I'm not making. I mean, I'm sorry. We like to have fun down here in the South. We're not so. We don't have our finger stuck. Anyway, let's get to the break. More to come. Cecil Hurt is coming up next. We'll ask him about Hugh Freeze.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
You're not worth a flip.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like a whole new person.
Disclaimer, you will not become a whole new person. This is impossible. You might be able to join a gym or diet program, buy a new wardrobe, get hair implants, but your DNA and physical form will remain the same. Geico waives any and all liability if you attempt to become a new person, except a cyborg. If you choose to become a half-human, half-cybernetic organism with lasers for eyes, the Geico legal team would be cool with that, because, quote, laser eyes are pretty sweet. Pew, 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 end quote.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Welcome back to our program. More of your phone calls at 855-242-7285. We showed you a headline earlier about this article with Hugh Freeze. We'll get to that in a second, but we want to talk about that with Cecil Hurt. But Cecil, it has been too long. Welcome to the program. I hope all is well.
Everything's going well, Paul. Thank you.
Glad to hear. Before we get to one of the subjects that we want to talk about, let's get an update on the not so dramatic quarterback battle between Tua and Jalen Hurts. What is Tua's condition right now?
Well, he's apparently re-injured the hand that he had injured earlier in the spring. We don't have a further update as to how much he'll participate. They'll practice again tomorrow, so we'll see if he's out there. And then we talked to Nick Saban on Thursday. This is the second one, and again, without having seen the X-rays, without having any, medical scoop, I don't know that he would play in A-Day with a second hand injury. Just you don't want some walk on with a lot of adrenaline to cause a problem. Come flying into the backfield and bang into that hand again. So I would be surprised. And so it really hasn't been a, quote unquote battle this spring because I don't think Tua's really, he hurt the hand originally in the first practice of the spring. So I don't know that he's been 100% throwing the football in any of the practices. So it's something that Nick Saban wasn't going to declare a starting quarterback in the spring anyway, but it's something that'll wait through the summer and probably into the last part of August.
Cecil, based on what you've heard, and again, I realize there's not much you can see, but when we talk to you, we know you're plugged in more than anyone else. What are you sensing on how Jalen has played and the little we have seen of Tua? I realize we won't have a resolution, but what if anything, has changed?
Well, Jalen's obviously gotten a lot of work, a lot of reps. He has a new quarterback coach in Dan Enos. The latest word from Nick Saban was that he's continuing to improve, which makes me think he's probably still not the passer that Tua is. Obviously, he's great at running the football. They're different guys. Jalen has a lot of experience, and it's a luxury to have somebody with that kind of experience coming back, regardless of whether it's as a starter or whether the other guy wins the job. So that's where they are right now. I just think there's so much buzz and electricity around Tua because of the last college football any of us saw was him completing a touchdown pass to win the national championship. That's aside from the usual, as you know, the starting quarterback at Alabama is the second most recognizable name in the state behind the head coach at Alabama. So setting that aside, Tua was just such a sensation in January. But there's been a lot of interest and probably a little disappointment that he hadn't been able to compete at 100% in spring training.
I realize we're concentrating, Cecil, on the QB situation, but overall, this team, a lot of shoes to fill, offensively and defensively. What is your assessment?
Well, there's a lot of injuries too this spring, not just Tua. Derek Duty is out. Terrell Shavers, another one of the top receivers, is out. Anthony Jennings, who was such a big part of Alabama's win over Clemson on the defensive line, hadn't participated at all. this spring, so there's been some of that. Nobody, as you know, Paul, nobody's going to believe anybody who sits here and complains about, well, Alabama doesn't have any depth. They're out of players. That's not the situation. But they are thinner than they have been in the past at some positions. They don't have the depth at linebacker. They needed tremendous depth at linebacker just to make it through the year. Last season, they don't have that this year. They're very inexperienced in the secondary. I think the defense was a little better in this last scrimmage, although they had to go indoors because the weather was so bad here on Saturday. So we'll see what happens at A-Day, but there are some questions. Now, again, do I expect anybody around the country in your audience has a whole lot of sympathy for the problems on Alabama's roster? No, I don't.
And I realize the schedule is somewhat subjective, but when it was made, maybe Louisville looked like a power with Lamar Jackson, but they don't anymore. Help me better understand the schedule. There's only so much you can control, but from a distance, it looks like a really bad schedule, Cecil.
Well, they can be hard to judge. Everybody thought that last year's opener with Florida State, you remember the pregame hype and that it would be the game of the year, and it didn't turn out to be that way, and Florida State really didn't turn out to be much of a schedule boost. But you can't control your conference rotation, who you play. They don't play Georgia, who's the obvious favorite in the East, unless they should play in the postseason. So you don't control that. They do control the non-conference portion of the schedule. They probably thought Louisville would be a better matchup than maybe it looks like it will be with Lamar Jackson gone. So they're not going to have a lot of margin for error. They certainly do get some benefit of the doubt because of the success that they've had from select doors. I think that's a true statement, but people are going to look at that, and people are going to say, hey, if they don't have that kind of quality win, unless if they go undefeated, as you know, an undefeated SEC champion is fine, but that would involve beating the East champion in the last game. But the 12 regular season games, Auburn will be a good game. Texas A&M feels good about themselves, but there's not going to be any marquee level games until very late in the schedule, if then.
Finally, there was a story that came out earlier today about a subject that you're very familiar with, and that was the attempt by Nick Saban to hire Hugh Freeze. A lot of people thought it was a done deal. Freeze was telling people he thought he had the job, and then he didn't have the job. The story on AL.com suggested, according to sources, that the SEC played a role in this. The SEC has a bylaw which gives them consultation but not jurisdiction. Can you add anything to this story?
Well, I think it was not just at Alabama.
Well, yeah, it included 4 other schools, but we're concerned about Alabama.
Right. So I think that Nick would like to have made that move, but received word that it would not. I don't know if they have absolute veto power. I suppose they did if it came to that, but as you know, they try to handle these things between the league office and all the institutions quietly. So I think that Greg Sankey was conscious of the situation and what the public perception would be, and at least wanted to wait 1 year. Whether that was pleasing to Coach Freeze's representative, I don't know. I get the sense that perhaps it was not.
Does it or does it not shoot to smithereens the theory that Nick Saban is the most powerful man in college football and can get anything done he wants if he couldn't even hire Hugh Freeze?
Well, this isn't the first time that the SEC office has overruled what Nick Saban wanted to do. If you remember the Maurice Smith situation, the SEC office didn't really back him up in that situation either. So Nick Saban is a powerful person, but is he more powerful than a conference commissioner? No, I don't think so.
We'll leave it at that. Cecil, thank you very much for your time. Always good to talk to you.
Okay, Paul. Good to talk to you.
Good stuff from Cecil Hurt. As we continue on the program, your reaction to that and more at 855-242-7285.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Welcome back. Glad you're here. Quite a show and quite an interview there with Cecil Hurt. Appreciate him coming on. Always fascinating. Let's get to the calls at 855-242-7285. Anthony is in Boston. Anthony, welcome to the program. Good afternoon.
Hey, Paul, it's my first time actually getting through. I love this show. I'm a truck driver. I'm always here on the Northeast. I just wanted to say it's a lot more Alabama fans up here than people think. Mostly a bandwagon fans, and it really disgusts me because I'm an Auburn fan. I'm originally from Mobile. But there are a lot of Bama fans up here. They cannot name any coaches before Nick Saban. That is the funniest thing about it.
That is funny.
And I did have a question about the Auburn deal with the NCAA basketball thing. Have you heard anything else about that yet?
No, it's really been quiet. I mean, one thing, in the last couple of months have been pretty positive toward Auburn. Many wondered. In fact, Pete Thamel of Yahoo thought it was possible that Bruce Pearl would not even make it to the end of the year or past the end of the year. And the president at Auburn has come out supporting Coach Pearl. So I think there's at least a modicum of optimism right now.
Okay. Thanks for taking my call. Taking my call, Paul. I look forward to seeing you at the Senior Bowl one year, hopefully.
Hey, Anthony, thank you, and you be safe out there on the roads. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
You got it. David is in Alabama, and you're on next. Good afternoon, David.
Paul Finebaum.
How are you?
Doing great. I was calling to tell you this is my birthday, and I was talking to my daughter earlier today, and she asked what I wanted for my birthday. I told her I've got it. They got us Nick Saban up there. What do you think would have happened if Nick Saban would have stayed at LSU? How many championships would he have?
I think if Nick if Nick had stayed there and not left, and he would have been tempted, LSU would be the most dominant program in college football and would have been that way since 2003.
I think he would have at least 7.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you because that would have meant Alabama would not have had anyone of Saban's ilk, and LSU would just be on an incredible run. I don't see any stopping them, frankly. I mean, listen, they won another without Saban because of Saban's talent. They should have won another one. That's 3 without even counting. Could they have had 3 or 4 more? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We beat them 20. They played us again for it. So, when we beat them, they didn't cross the 50-yard line but once.
You're 100% correct about that.
Let me ask you this: can you get Jim to? He's supposed to be an excellent politician, along with a better baseball hitter than Ted Williams and a better swimmer than Michael Phelps. Could we get Jim to get the Alabama House or Senate to pass a bill where Saban can't retire till he's like 80? Because these people would go ballistic if he were to leave. Just think about it. We've already had a guy kill trees. We had another guy teabag a guy down in Louisiana. It's going to be bad if Saban ever does leave.
Well, he's never going to leave, David.
I hope he don't.
That's what I hear. He's 67. He's going to stay there until he's 97.
Hopefully. Well,
and maybe longer than that. Has there ever been a 100-year-old coach win a national championship? Do you know? You think it's possible? I mean,
it's possible
with all the health food out there today and
good science,
low-fat yogurt. Nick is up next. What do you say, Nick?
Hey, Paul. What's going on, buddy?
Doing great, my man.
Hey, look, old Jeff and Jeff calling up there from Chicago, wherever they at. They ought to name them Mutt and Jeff. Used to be a cartoon about Mutt and Jeff, I think, years ago.
There sure was.
Yeah, what I want to talk about, Paul, what do you think Alabama's backfield is going to look like this year compared to other SEC teams?
Good. What about you? What do you think?
I think they're going to be pretty good. Josh Jacobs, he's out with an injury, and they got that Foster, I believe it's Brian Foster, coming up doing pretty good. Should get a lot more playing time. What do you think?
Listen, I really don't know, Nick. I mean, to me, Alabama's got so many 5-star players. Harris is we saw what he could do in the championship game. I mean, they are going to be loaded.
Yeah, I know it. They are, but I'm just wondering what your comments and what you thought about it.
I'll take a good look at them this weekend, which is all you can do. Hey, thanks for the call. Patrick is up next in Tennessee. Good afternoon, Patrick.
How you doing today, Paul?
We are doing great. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. First of all, I just wanted to throw out a quick apology for my call last week. I made a bad analogy there, I guess, when I was comparing to some Tennessee fans like myself to women that have battered wife syndrome. I was told that I was being a little bit bad there on my analogy. Just to throw out a quick apology to anybody I might have offended with that.
We're good. Thanks for the apology.
All right. Just want to ask you a quick question. Get your expert opinion on Tennessee basketball and that next step that we need to take. It seems like Tennessee has been right on the edge of taking that next step. I'm not saying getting on Kentucky's level or Duke's level or Kansas level, but, we have the facilities. We have excellent fans, fill up Thompson Bowling Arena all the time. It seems like there's just something that is holding us back from taking that next step to being a team that just gets into the tournament every now and then to being a consistent tournament team. I just wanted to get your opinion on what that was.
Well, listen, I was fairly disappointed, Patrick, on the way the season ended. I thought they ended up getting a bad matchup against Loyola. It was a game at that point in the year. Now Loyola went to the Final Four. It was just a little bit hard to maybe take too seriously. But let's remember where this program came from. And I think Rick has done a phenomenal job. But yeah, I think it's time to take the next step.
What do you think we have to do to take the next step? In recruiting, we can't. Grant Williams is a great player, but I don't think anybody would claim to be expert enough to know that he was going to come in and do what he's done at Tennessee in 2 years. And, every now and then we'll pick up a really good 4-star like a Josh Richardson or somebody like that. And then every few years get lucky with a 5-star. But to take that next step, we obviously
No, you're right. I mean, I think ultimately you need to upgrade. The one thing I do like is it's a real team versus a bunch of players coming and going like we're seeing at some of the top programs. But I understand the frustration. Thank you for the call. We have an hour to go. Look forward to talking to all of you at 855-242-7285. Andy Staples, we'll get to tell you his take on some of the spring games and a look ahead to this huge weekend where there are so many important ones, including Alabama and Georgia. We're back after this.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Put a little cherry on the top.
Thank you for listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast. The Paul Finebaum Show airs weekdays on the SEC Network, beginning at 3 Eastern.
It was BYOG, bring your own guts.
This is the best
Do you hear me?
of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Welcome back. Final hour of the program. We have arrived on this Monday afternoon. Glad you are here. Andy Staples yet to join us. We still have a few more minutes for you to call in, and you can do so at 855-242-7285. Let's head back to the phones, and Dave is in Pensacola. Good afternoon, Dave.
Hey, Paul. My first time ever calling into you. Very avid listener of yours, sir.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Paul, it's like I've got a good thing because, hey, roll tide, I am all the way. But I have one good thing, well, not a good thing, I'm sorry to say. Our coach, success breeds success. And our man has done that year in, year out. and Nick has done us righteously. And after this year, I can see Nick tiring out after his success, after everybody being promoted from under him, after him promoting them or showing them and promoting them and, exceeding, and which I know that he's proud of. But it's got to burn on him. Don't you think it's got to get to him, don't you think?
Well, it's on some level, yes.
And like Nick's been around a long time, and I see him going out on top. And good Lord's willing, hopefully that will go on through this year, and hopefully before he burns out next year, Roll Tide is like, yes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the call. Let's go to Raleigh up next in Arkansas. Raleigh, welcome to the program.
Hello.
Hi there.
Yes, I'd like to ask, what does Paul think about the job that Chad Morris is doing at the University of Arkansas? And what is his prediction for our record?
Yeah, Raleigh, thanks. Yeah, I like Chad Morris a lot. I think he has a difficult job ahead of him, at least in the short term. I just think there is such a dearth of talent on that football team, and therefore I don't look at this season as being phenomenal. I mean, I looked at the schedule the other day when we were talking. I think it was, who was it, David Basil or someone, and I think 6 wins is possible. I would hasten to predict beyond that. I think 6 would be a good target. Get to a bowl game and try to get some momentum back in this program. But I think Arkansas is going to face a steeper climb than A&M or Florida, just to name 2 SEC schools that made a coaching change last season. Thank you for the call. Do appreciate it. Let's stay with that subject. Scott is in Arkansas. You're on the air. Go right ahead, Scott.
Hey, what's going on, Paul?
Hi there.
Hey, you talked to Austin Allen last week?
Yes.
And his NFL goals, whatever you want to call them. I'm surprised this kid's not getting a little more attention. He was a really good quarterback. He just didn't have any protection. I mean, he threw off with his back foot for 2 years. He had great numbers.
I tend to agree with you. He said he's probably going to be a free agent day after the draft, which it's not. If you're not drafted as a quarterback, if you're not drafted in the first or second round, I mean, what difference does it make? You're just as good going in as a free agent, I think.
You're right. It doesn't make any difference. Hey, Trevor, say hi to Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Hey, Trevor. What's up, bud?
Trevor's 9. He's going to be a superstar. He's going to play for the Razorbacks, right?
I can't wait.
LSU.
Oh.
No, hold on a second, Scott. What's going on there?
Well, he thinks he's going to play for LSU, but we have a
remind. Hey, Trevor.
Ongoing argument.
Trevor, I think is this still the rule where does a parent have to sign the letter of intent?
This dad does.
Yeah. So Trevor, unless you go out and buy some new parents on eBay, you're stuck.
Well, Odell Beckham played for LSU, and that's kind of his hero.
That was the George Johnson. That's who I was.
But you're gonna.
Trevor, let me give you some fatherly advice. It's way too early. Please don't base your career on Odell Beckham. Okay. Wait until you're ready to make a decision.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, like Antonio Brown is awful.
Antonio Brown is the best receiver in the NFL, Trevor.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is.
Trevor, one thing about the NFL, it changes every year. So when you have to make a decision in about 4 or 5 or 6 years, by then Arkansas will have some heroes that you can point to.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Stay home, Trevor. Take my word for it. Arkansas is a great state if you played at Arkansas.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, thanks. Man. That didn't exactly go as planned. He talked about his kid playing for Arkansas. The kid said, "I want to go to LSU." Let the LSU situation. Let everything settle down. You're 9 years old. I mean, let's see. You have 7 years. Yeah. You don't know what's going to be happening at Arkansas or LSU by then. Steve is in Tennessee. Go right ahead, Steve.
Yes, Paul. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask the question. In no way am I a Butch Jones fan, or was I ever a Butch Jones fan. But everybody got on to him about his little, I guess, asinine sayings. I'll let you explain that to the people in Alabama, what that means. But anyway, another brick in the wall and all that stuff. What's the difference between that and this dingbat they hired, Jeremy Pruitt from Alabama, that all he can talk about is, I used to be a high school coach, and my defensive lineman used to be a high school coach, and everybody's a high school coach. Let me tell you something. There's as much difference between a high school coach as there is between my first girlfriend and my first wife, and you don't want to get in that world, I'm telling you. If he don't know the difference between a high school coach and 1A football, then he ought to still be a high school coach. Am I just totally... it doesn't seem like any of you professionals, and that's not a put down because y'all are professionals. You went to college. I'm 3 days older than you. You went to Tennessee. I'm from Tennessee. We're at different ends.
Well, you know the deal here, and I want to let you in on a secret of the media, Steve. I think we always tend to prop up first-year coaches. And I think Jeremy Pruitt would be in that category where we don't have it. Listen, I have no earthly idea what he's going to be like as a head coach. So all we have is to base our opinion on what we've seen of him. I like what I've seen of him. I understand the optimism, but I've seen a lot of guys come and go, and 3 years later they're gone. I don't know whether he'll be that guy or not. I really have no earthly idea. Sometimes with him I don't know. You're optimistic, and there's a buzz. All he can do is get the fundamentals corrected at Tennessee and create some excitement. Has he done that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Because here, let me give you an example. Yes, he was defensive coordinator last year at Alabama, and Alabama's that's what everybody sets their standard by,
sure.
And they should. And they won a national championship. But if you sit back in your chair and you are the ultimate professional, if you think Jeremy Pruitt ran that defense, then what do you think Nick Saban did? He's the best defensive coach in the United States.
Well, yeah. Here's the problem, though. I think a better way of looking at this is, okay, let me give you the 5 new coaches in the SEC. I think there are 5, aren't there? Mullen, Fisher, Morris, Pruitt, and Joe Moorhead. Matt Luke is also part of that list. So there's 6 new coaches. Now, of those 6, I think this is how you have to do it intellectually. I just think because you can go up and down ESPN, SEC, whatever, SEC Network, and we're all going to say the same thing. But of those 6 coaches, how would you rank them in order of a success ratio? Would you rank Jeremy Pruitt's odds of success at Tennessee ahead of Jimbo Fisher, ahead of Dan Mullen, ahead of someone else's? And that's when it gets really interesting in my mind.
Well, I can see that, but the only one I'd rank him ahead of would be Moorhead. And that's because I don't know anything about Moorhead.
Well, I do, and I'm not sure I would, because Moorhead has a pretty good resume as well. But I don't. Tennessee. He is in a very difficult neighborhood to succeed. I hope he does, but I think you're selling him a little bit short. I don't think his calling card is that I used to be a high school coach. That's a nice, humble way of relating. I've only lived in Knoxville for a couple of years, but I do feel like I know the people. There are a lot of my friends who are up there, and you just don't come in and brag about, hey, I was at Alabama last year. You leave Alabama off your conversation, and you talk about your roots. You talk about where your father being a high school coach, where you got your start. Kirby Smart's father was a high school coach too. It benefited him well. So I have no problem with what Jeremy Pruitt is saying. The only problem I'll have with him is if he can't win after 3 or 4 years. We'll be right back. More to come. Andy Staples will join us next.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Welcome back. Andy Staples joining us. Always great to catch up with Andy, who well-known writer, does his own show. Andy, we were talking before you came on about the craziness of college football now, where you have a quarterback battle pretty much on every corner. It doesn't matter where you are. The Clemson situation, Alabama's been hashed out. We saw what happened at Georgia last year. We may see it again this year. What's going on here?
It's amazing. I think it's a combination of these quarterbacks playing year-round 7-on-7 and getting a lot of private instruction and coming in ready to play, and then it being a much harder position than it used to be, so therefore much harder to hold on to. Because think about it, in these offenses where you basically want a dual-threat type quarterback, or your quarterback run as part of it, I mean, you're putting so much of the offense on that kid, and it's hard to be good enough to withstand the pressure day after day, month after month, year after year. So you could have a good season like Kelly Bryant and Jalen Hurts did, and then all of a sudden you could lose your job. And I don't think anybody would be surprised if Tua won the job at Alabama, and I don't think anybody would be surprised if Trevor Lawrence or Hunter Johnson won the job at Clemson.
No, it is pretty amazing. Well, let me start with you in the place where you live. It's kind of hard to get a handle on that quarterback situation, but you live down there. Tell us what Dan Mullen has meant to that school, and how do you think ultimately it's going to work out?
Well, there is a different energy around the program now, and I think one of the ideas that Dan Mullen and Scott Strickland, the AD, had is let's try to make this a little bit fun, because Florida football hasn't been a whole heck of a lot of fun really since the year before Urban Meyer's last year. And I think if you asked Urban Meyer, the 2009 year when they were really good still wasn't a whole heck of a lot of fun. And it just seems like everything's been way too serious. And you saw a spring game on Saturday where Dan Mullen didn't take himself too seriously. The team didn't take itself too seriously. It looked like the fans were having a good time. Now, the question is, does that translate into wins in the fall? We'll have to see. I mean, I think combined with that, they're doing some stuff in the weight room. Their strength program under Jim McElwain was not that great. And I don't ever want to slip into the cliche of, the last strength coach did this and it was like a curves. And the new strength coach, though, he's having them chew iron bars and taking them out to the ocean, and they're dragging boats everywhere and hovercraft. That's not exactly what's going on. But this is a little more modern strength program than what they had before. So they are seeing some gains there. And I think more than anything, the vibe is different, which they need. But it doesn't mean they've solved the quarterback quandary, because it's basically probably Felipe Franks or Kyle Trask. I mean, Emory Jones, you're asking an awful lot of a true freshman to come in and play Dan Mullen's offense. He'll tell you it's not a super simple offense. It's not one that is designed for a true freshman to come in and take over. You look at the guys who started at Mississippi State, they developed to where they were. And, Felipe Franks probably got thrown in there a year before he should have played. And the question now is, can you reel that back in? And I'm curious to see, Paul, what they do. Do they go into the grad transfer market? Because there's an intriguing situation in Columbus, Ohio. So Joe Burrow and Dwayne Haskins are up for that job of the starting quarterback at Ohio State. We all know that Urban Meyer's offense and Dan Mullen's offense are fairly similar. Joe Burrow is going to graduate in May. Urban Meyer has said he owes Joe Burrow a decision. Now, if you've watched, you're pretty sure Dwayne Haskins has the edge in that competition. So if Joe Burrow suddenly comes available, I wonder if Florida will go after him. I imagine there'll be quite a market for his services, because he might be the best quarterback on the grad transfer market this year. But I'd be curious to see, because, while the offense is kind of veered a little bit differently when Urban Meyer and Dan Mullen split up, the DNA is still very much the same.
We were talking a minute ago about Clemson, and that's all we're hearing in terms of Trevor Lawrence. Are you hearing the same thing in terms of, we saw a little bit of it, but there's more to a quarterback battle at a major competitor for the national championship than just what we saw in the spring game or see in the spring game?
Well, I think that's the thing. The spring game and the way it played out is probably going to give people an idea that the competition's a little different than it is. Kelly Bryant has been doing just fine in that competition. It just so happened that in the spring game, you see Trevor Lawrence throw a 50-yard touchdown pass to T. Higgins, and then you turn around and Kelly Bryant misses 2 wide-open guys on the next series. And because that very limited window is all that we've got to see, we assume, oh, well, that must mean Bryant is fading and Trevor Lawrence is ascendant. Well, there were 14 other practices, and I know Kelly Bryant had a lot of good ones. So I think this is a lot less cut and dry than anybody thinks, and I think Dabo Swinney is a very loyal person, and I think he's going to give Kelly Bryant every chance to keep that job.
Before we get to the Hugh Freeze situation, what's the latest?
Double secret probation?
Yeah. What have you heard on Shea Patterson's availability for Michigan?
We'll find out when the NCAA decides. This is kind of in the NCAA's hands. You know, you've had Shea Patterson and Thomas Mars present their case. Ole Miss has presented its version of the story. And, you know, Ole Miss can't block Shea Patterson. They can simply say, hey, we don't agree with his version of the story. And that's what happened. So we'll see what the NCAA decides on that. I think it's an interesting situation because I worry that there's a lot of folks that are fans of Michigan that think, oh, if Shea Patterson is ruled eligible immediately, then this is going to be great. Michigan's going to be awesome. Don't put all that on him because, remember, if Shea Patterson had come back to Ole Miss, he would have been in a very tight competition with Jordan Ta'amu, and he might not have won it. And he's a very good quarterback, but he's also the same quarterback who started against Alabama last year. What did they lose, 66-3? So in the Big Ten East, you're going to face teams that maybe not quite the talent level of Alabama, but Ohio State's awfully close. Penn State's awfully close. Michigan State's really good, and their defense is always good. So if he's eligible to play immediately, I hope they don't decide he's going to be the savior of the program. Because I'm sure their coaches aren't looking at it that way. And I imagine even if he can play immediately, he's not going to be slotted in there as the starter. He's got to beat out Brandon Peters. He's got to beat out Dylan McCaffrey. So that's a little less cut and dried situation than people think. It's not just, oh, he's eligible, he's the starter. It's not that bad. And the other thing is, if he's not eligible, it's not the end of the world for Michigan. Honestly, it doesn't really matter who plays quarterback for them if their offensive line doesn't get better. They've not really been able to establish a run game in the last few years. They've not protected the quarterback very well. They've got Ed Warner now, who is the offensive line coach for some very good Ohio State teams and some very good Notre Dame teams. He hopefully will get them blocking better, and then whoever plays quarterback will benefit from that.
Before you go, the story came out earlier, things that everyone has heard for months now, that Hugh Freeze was on his way to Tuscaloosa. It was something mysteriously happened, and the other schools tried to hire him. The report said that the SEC was consulted. There is a bylaw that gives the SEC the right, or it's necessary to consult them on major infractions cases. The bylaw states they don't have the final say, but we all know that Hugh Freeze is not working right now. Your take on this rather bizarre story?
I just call it double secret probation. It's the same deal Chip Kelly had to go through when Florida was going after him. He had to kind of make his case to Greg Sankey, and it wasn't like he had to really refresh Greg Sankey on the case because in Chip Kelly's case, Sankey was actually on the committee on infractions for Kelly's Oregon case. So he knew all the deal, how it worked, and so Kelly said, hey, here's what I've done, here's what happened, here's my version of it. And given the fact that Florida offered them the job, you'd think the commissioner gave the blessing. Now, nobody will confirm that, but I don't think Florida would have offered him the job otherwise. With Hugh Freeze, it's double secret probation, basically. That they can't stop these schools from hiring Hugh Freeze, but the question is, are you going to go up against the commissioner and hire him? Is it worth the fight? And what you saw is it's not. Now, I do think Hugh Freeze will get a chance to work again pretty soon because, let's look at what happened. What he ultimately got fired for at Ole Miss was not the NCAA stuff. It was the other stuff. And while that is very hurtful to his family and hurtful to himself, it's not an Art Briles situation. I think it's more akin to what Bobby Petrino was doing at Arkansas and Bobby Petrino's been hired as a head coach twice since then. So I think somebody's going to give Hugh Freeze a chance. Now, the question is, will it be somebody in the SEC? I don't know, because if they're still getting kind of the shake of the head or the high sign, no, don't hire this guy, I don't know how that works. Now, he has a 2-game suspension from the NCAA, but essentially got hit with failure to monitor with that head coach accountability legislation, which says you're supposed to know what your underlings are doing. So I think he can make the case that, look, at the end of 2018, the suspension I was supposed to serve, that's already gone, because if you look, the suspension, you could hire him after November 30th, 2018, and he didn't have to serve a suspension as a head coach. So I think somebody's going to give him a chance. I just don't know if it's going to be in the SEC. Maybe it's an ACC school or a Big 12 school or a school in the American. But the fact of the matter is, when you beat Alabama twice, when your offense gives Nick Saban fits, somebody's going to try to hire you. This is, again, it's not an Art Briles situation. More similar to Bobby Petrino, and Bobby Petrino is gainfully employed last I checked.
He sure is. Andy, always great information. We really appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Paul.
Good stuff. Andy Staples, always chock full. We will take a break. 30 minutes to go, and we'll get back to your calls, including some dating advice. Remember that segment we had a couple of weeks ago with the guy from Florida? We tried to help him. Apparently we did. Stick around. The gory details coming up next.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
You're not worth a kill.
I'm a one-trick pony, literally. I show up at kids' parties and act cute. That's pretty much it. So excuse me for being bitter. When Geico says not only could we save you money on car insurance, but we do more. Like give you 24/7 access online, over the phone, or even via our award-winning mobile app. Well, ooh la la, aren't they multi-talented? Hey, I said organic carrots.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
Frank is up next. Frank is calling from Atlanta. How are you, Frank?
I'm doing good, Mr. Finebaum. How are yourself?
We are doing great. Thank you.
Great interview with Andy Staples. I think that the quarterback competition in Alabama is one of the best that's going. I look around the landscape of college football, and Clemson, with the quarterback that they have coming back and the addition of their true freshman, Lawrence, I believe.
That is correct, Trevor Lawrence.
Yes, sir. And then you look at Georgia with their phenomenal quarterback coming back from a true freshman, his second year. And then Justin Fields coming in. I think that the Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Hurts competition is just so healthy for the team, and it just breeds competition and just the will to, when you have win your spot on the team, it's your spot, and you have worked as hard as you can to get it, and I think that is just the atmosphere around Alabama and Tuscaloosa. I'll be at the A-Day game this weekend, sir. I'm so looking forward.
Wonderful.
I know that Tua is not going to be playing in the spring game. Is that right?
Frank, I think it's unlikely considering that he's banged up. But I hope you enjoy it. It looks like a good afternoon in Tuscaloosa. Can't wait to hear about it. I mentioned earlier this conversation with Ben in Jacksonville, Florida. He called about a month ago looking for dating advice. I clumsily helped. Randy helped. Nobody really seemed to help very much. Ben, let's get an update. What's going on?
Hey, Paul. How you doing today?
We are doing great. We're anxiously awaiting the word from you.
Well, I did take some of your advice, not necessarily all of it, but I did meet someone a week ago, and she's a real nice girl, and she's actually a Georgia fan.
Now for those who don't remember, Ben was you're a Tennessee fan?
Tennessee fan. Yes, sir.
You kind of stumbled into these Jacksonville bars with big Florida, Georgia town,
Paul,
wearing your garb, and we told you not to do that. So pick up the story.
We've gone over that. I go surfing, and then for lunch I go to somewhere and I have a beer afterwards, and that's where I met her. And, she was wearing Georgia gear or whatever. She had a Georgia shirt on. I don't know why. I mean, it's the middle of summer, or spring.
Yeah.
But I started talking to her when I did not bring up football not one time, just like you told me not to do, because it is not football season. And that worked out for me, and we went out one time. It was fun. We talked about everything under the sun other than football, and we're going out on another date later on this week.
That's good. Repeat.
Okay, so is she a big fan or not?
Yes, sir, she is.
So when she brought up Georgia football, how did you respond?
That's great. You guys were looking good. I was pulling for you guys during the national championship.
Now, did you tell her you're a Tennessee fan?
I have not mentioned Tennessee football not one time, Paul.
See, I don't think a Georgia lady is going to be as upset about you being a Tennessee fan.
I don't think so either. I think Florida Gator might be.
Yeah, I think the rivalry, I mean, Tennessee and Georgia have a good rivalry, but after last year's 42-0 game or whatever it was, I think the Tennessee's not exactly a threat to Georgia at the moment.
Yeah, well, there was that one year with Josh Dobbs. So
yeah, I remember it. I was there.
Might be a little hurt feelings there, but
probably not.
Whatever. But anyway, Paul, I just wanted to tell you that some of the advice that you did give me actually has worked out.
Well, listen. So you're going out with her again. Where are you guys going?
Tacos, Paul. Taco Lou.
So taking her out for some tacos.
Yeah, man. She's very much into tacos, as am I, so makes sense.
When will that be?
I think Sunday.
Who has a Sunday date?
I do, Paul, because I work 12-hour shifts, and I'm off on weird days, so.
Okay. I don't need to be criticizing your dating habits here, but Ben, let us know. We'll be here Monday.
All right. Well, maybe I'll see you at the Florida-Georgia game. I definitely won't be wearing Georgia gear, but, as things progress, we'll see how it goes.
I can't wait. Hey, thanks, Ben. Ben,
that's progress.
I'm not going to say anything else. Good for you. Let's just hope the Georgia girl's not watching right now. She's going, I think I went out with that guy the other day. I didn't realize he was a serial killer calling in a radio show. Let's continue with more phone calls. And Lewis is in South Carolina. Hello, Lewis. Good afternoon.
Hey, Mr. Paul. Great show.
Thank you.
Y'all looking good. I'm so privileged to be able to talk to you today. But I just wanted to mention this Jeff from Chicago.
Yeah.
Mr. Paul, you know it's cold up there. He might have brain freeze. You never know.
Well, let me ask you this. This is not a trick question, though, Lewis. To have this is not a teaser. To have brain freeze, there are two important elements necessary. One is for it to be cold. Do you know what the other one is?
Yeah, you got to have a brain.
Bingo.
Thank you, sir.
I think Jeff is disqualified.
Yes, sir. Well,
who was the guy in The Wizard of Oz? If I only had a brain, which one was that? The lion? No, he didn't.
Who won courage?
Might have been.
Who was it? The Tin Man, the lion. Tin Man needed a heart. Scarecrow needed a brain.
Scarecrow needed a brain.
And the lion needed a heart. If I only had I remember that.
Tell them boys down the hall to get off my grass.
I will. Yeah, I will.
All right.
Hey, thanks for the call. What's that, Lewis?
You were talking about the Citadel.
Yes.
You play in Alabama. You got to remember in 2016, the Citadel beat University of South Carolina at home.
Lewis, do you know how badly I remember that game since I was at that game?
I cannot imagine.
It was a long afternoon. I was somebody, I don't know what the deal was. I was there for the SEC show in the morning. The network was doing the game, and I volunteered to do the sideline duty. And I had to interview that guy from the Citadel after the game. And I didn't realize that he hated me, and I didn't realize until after the fact. A year before, I'd been on ESPN Sports Center or Game Day or some show. I can't remember what it was. And they asked me about the Citadel playing Florida State. I said, what a joke. I said, Florida State shouldn't be playing high school teams. Next year, I'm running after this guy. Hey, Coach, congratulations. He looked at me like, I'm not talking to you. I said, we're live on television here, man. We'll take a short break. Back after that. I remember the game well.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Pat is in Ohio. Hello, Pat.
Hey, great. I've been on hold for 45 minutes, but I guess it's worth the wait. I've been trying for, months.
I'm glad you made it. Thank you.
Yes, listen, I'm up here in Ohio, and I'm one of the guys that are fortunate enough to remember Coach Saban when he was recruiting at my high school for Ohio State and then Michigan State, and a lot of the staff that he had been with up at Michigan State and some of the coaches were always, taking a look at the kids in northeastern Ohio. Unfortunately, the numbers just aren't there anymore. But the Big Ten seems to be able to hold its own. I have the ultimate respect for the SEC and been a long-time listener.
Thank you so much.
I just need your opinion. I know you've talked about playoffs and this and that and 6 teams and 8 teams and everybody's going back and forth. But I really think that, the Big 12, they have some pretty doggone good teams, but I do think that they need numbers. I think you need more teams involved. The Pac-12 should be the Pac-14 maybe, and then it would probably even out. And having numbers like that, the American Conference has some good teams, and probably some moving around there would solidify a lot of things. I think Memphis has gone up and down, has a pretty good program, and, some of the other schools. Where do you see things going in the future as far as that goes? Maybe we're looking at 14 teams in the 5 major conferences. Where do you see any movement for some of those schools? And even maybe some movement in terms of switching conferences. But I think,
Pat,
personally, I think.
Let me say this, and I know this sounds so firm here, but it is so difficult to get out of a league and into another. It wasn't that difficult years ago, but there are a lot of clauses now being put in these contracts that make it very difficult, and you pay a tremendous premium. I think we're going to see more expansion in the coming years. It's been really quiet. Usually these things are, not to go into like the Big Bang Theory or something, but they tend to go in waves, and we're in a relatively quiet period right now, but it won't take much to see more consolidation.
Yeah, I mean, there's some schools on the West Coast. I mean, Boise, because they're going to be able to compete with the Pac week in and week out, Pac-12 or whatever. Although for their facility is not exactly the best in terms of numbers, but they're just as good as Washington State's in some of those things. University of Cincinnati, I think, having Paul Brown Stadium, some games there, and proximity of things. Memphis, there's facilities available. But it's like you say, I realize there's escape clauses that are going to cost some big bucks.
By the way, I think there's, I think the Big 12 is pretty vulnerable right now. They are the only major league conference without a conference network alignment. The Pac-12 has one. The ACC starts next year. SEC, Big Ten are very successful. And that ultimately could be a factor because there is just so much. I realize I'm talking about ourselves here, but the amount of money that has come from the conference networks into the coffers of the individual schools is just enormous.
Yeah, and I think it really helps. People want to say it, but it really helps other sports.
It helps them more than anything else. You're absolutely right. Absolutely.
the Mississippi State women.
Yeah, we just did a promote.
I
mean, there are so many. The young ladies on that team, the men on the baseball, the other sports that normally don't get the attention. They're on in prime time on major networks that can be seen coast to coast. And this isn't a major incentive. So if you're the league that doesn't have it, or if you're a next tier, you've got problems to try to keep up with the Big Four. And I think right now you have the Big Four and the Big 12. The Big 12 is in a very awkward position.
Yeah, they're going to have to be awful good to be able to break that. Year in and year out.
No, you're right, and not only that, Pat. Even though the Pac-12 has the aforementioned network, they are struggling on a lot of other areas. Hey, thank you for the call. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast. The Paul Finebaum Show airs weekdays on the SEC Network, beginning at 3 Eastern.